Diggs. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. I had the blessing, the privilege, and the opportunity very recently here to broadcast live from the country of Mexico, to broadcast from Mexico. And so I cannot thank God enough for opportunities like this. We got to do work in the Bahamas and got to do stuff as well in Mexico and got to broadcast to you not only Wake Up Call, but a mashup of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, Superpowered Pop, as well as Do Diz with Dan and Comic Book Trails from the country of Mexico. So I'm very honored to be here with you this morning, having made history over the weekend and over this past week. You heard some great conversations with the Dolphins in Dolphin Dive with Lemoyne College, and you had the opportunity to get to know Isaiah Salter as well as LaToya Baker. You can go back and watch those on youtube.com and facebook.com/Wake Up Call DT, as well as everything else we got to do an exclusive with Mo Neal, who's now in the XFL with the San Antonio Brahmas, and my one-on-one conversation with Jason Lucas, as well as two Mike No Filter conversations with Andrea Smith. So, with all that being said, we welcome you here to the end of January. How that happened, I have no idea. It's January 23rd. So we are here in the last full week of January with Brendan Murphy. Brendan Murphy joining me here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. We crossed paths many years ago in our alma mater, Marywood University, and the show that I created, MU Courtside. He asked me to come back. One of the greatest, honestly, one of the greatest honors of my life, very high up there on the list. And Brendan is now here with us today to talk sports and life, his Jets, my Jaguars, as well as the NFL playoffs, college football, and so much more. So with that being said, Mr. Murphy, how we doing?
I'm doing well. It's snowing outside quite a bit here in the Poconos, but what else is new this time of year? But it's glad to be back as always.
Yeah, man, and I'm very happy to have you back as always here on the broadcast where sports meets life. And thank you all for tuning in and being a part of it. So, Brendan, I guess to just kind of open it up, broad scope in this thing, let's go to your Jets and your take on this season. I mean, you guys saw Zach Wilson, the number 2 overall pick, the guy that came after Trevor Lawrence out of BYU. You saw Mike White, and of course you saw Joe Flacco at quarterback. The Jets, one of many teams this season that played at least 3 quarterbacks, believe it or not, in a very atypical year. Your take on the quarterbacks, and which one would you like to see at this point?
Anybody not named Zach Wilson.
Okay.
Let's just put it that way.
Okay. Fair enough.
And you probably remember this from when we talked about it after that draft in 2021. I was never high on Wilson. I never liked Wilson to begin with. Just watching him last year at the beginning of the season, he looked awful, but he did have some improvement after the injury last year. Came back, played a little bit better, was protecting the football, and played decent football down the stretch. Now, I mean, it was in meaningless games, but, that's kind of what it is when the Jets are going, 4-13 for the season. But then this year you're figuring, all right, like he took a big step forward at the end of last year. Maybe we can keep that going. And we did nothing but just go backwards. I mean, he gets hurt in the preseason. Like I think it was in the first quarter of the preseason game. Sprains his knee. Could have been worse, but all things considered, it's probably better off that injury was minor because we were able to find out that he's not the guy.
Yeah.
But he went out there and he went 5-2 prior to getting benched, and everyone is saying, "Oh, well, why are you benching a guy when he's going 5-2?" Well, because he stinks.
Yeah.
They're not winning because of him; they're winning in spite of him. So, I mean, I was at the Patriots game at home where they had where he had the 3 interceptions, and realistically, we should have been up 17-3 going into the half, but a pick 6 was called back. Whether you want to agree with it or not, that was the ruling on the field. But they ended up losing that game. Me and my friends ended up getting out of there early. But then going into Buffalo, he goes and beats the Bills. That was, again, winning in spite of him.
Yeah.
And then out of the bye week, I don't want to say he was awful in the second Patriots game, but he didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, like he didn't throw any interceptions, but I mean, he just didn't play well at all. It's just he didn't do anything positive, and then he gets benched for. Hold on, I told you I had a surprise for you when and if we talked about the Jets.
Okay. All right. Show it to
He
me.
got benched for this guy.
There it is.
Yes, I got a Mike White jersey.
Bought your Mike White jersey. I love it.
Yep, I had to because last year I thought he was awesome. I was very much on the Mike White bandwagon.
Yeah.
And Mike White played, decent football. I mean, he dominated against the Bears. I mean, that game was no contest. And then, he played poor in the first half against Minnesota, but did everything he could to try and get them back in that game. And they had a play that could have won them the game.
Yeah.
I mean, Barrios drops a touchdown pass in the end zone. There's not a whole lot you can do about that. But then he gets hurt against Buffalo, and my God, this dude's a warrior. I mean, the dude ended up with 3 cracked ribs during that Buffalo game.
Yeah.
And he came back in to finish that game.
Yeah.
And very nearly brought them all the way back to win it. So Mike White deserves a lot of credit for the way the Jets played down the stretch. Then you had to go back to Zach Wilson, and he did not look good against the Vikings, or I'm sorry, against the Lions or the Jaguars. Played poorly in those games, and then we went back to Mike White, who was clearly still hurt.
Yeah.
Against Seattle, was not himself. And then week 18, obviously we're out of it, so they went to Joe Flacco because there was no way you could put Zach Wilson back on the field. But long story short, I was saying preseason that 7 or 8 wins I'd be happy with.
Yeah.
Things change when you're 7-3, when you're 7-4. When you're 7-4 through 11 games, 7 wins isn't going to cut it. That at that point we were trying to look at, all right, who are we going to play in the playoffs?
Yeah.
With Mike White at quarterback. And then we lose 6 in a row to close out the season and end up firing the offensive coordinator because clearly there was a disconnect between him and the locker room. And I'm sure we'll get into that later. But overall, if you asked me in the beginning of the season if they were going to win 7 games and we were going to realize Zach Wilson was not the guy,
yeah,
and we were going to move on to somebody better, I'd take that. Because I still thought Zach Wilson stunk, and I still didn't like him. And if there's any Jets fans that are listening to this, me and a bunch of my friends are going to have a little Zach Wilson jersey bonfire once we officially move away from him. So feel free to bring your Zach Wilson jerseys, and we'll enjoy some s'mores over the bonfire.
So I guess the answer to my question's already been answered. Are you a proponent of burning jerseys when you're done with a player? I guess that answer is yes. So,
well, normally the answer would be no.
Okay.
But I was dumb enough in the middle of the season when we were 5-2 to go and get a Zach Wilson jersey. Now, luckily, I buy all my jerseys off the little Chinese websites that are like $30 a piece. So I get a ton of them. So for me, it's, I don't really care about burning $30.
Yeah.
But still, I wore it once,
right,
and I wore it for the second Patriots game.
Let me ask you.
And you lose on a. Go ahead.
No,
yeah.
I was going to say. Let me ask you another question. You spent $30 on the jersey. Positives and negatives that the jersey cost as much as a carton of eggs right now.
Oh my God. No, luckily I'm still living at home, so I'm not the one that needs to buy them. Luckily, thankfully my parents still, take care of me. I live at home. They're, when I'm eating at home for the most part, I'm not paying for food. So, I'm grateful for that. And, it's only going to be so much longer because, I'm going to be 25 here in a couple of months, and
yeah,
I'd like to be getting ready to go out on my own. But I'll enjoy it while it lasts, because, when you're living at home and your parents are providing for you, you can only, I don't want to take advantage of them. And and they know that, I would move out right now if I could afford it, but I can't. With the economy right now and the way the housing market is, I can't afford to move out of the house right now. So, I'll be here until I can afford it.
And that's the thing, is that unfortunately, because you bring that up, and I'm going to, speak on that for a second. there's a lot of, they were talking about my generation. I'm a few years older than Brendan, but my generation, they were discussing, kids moving out and then moving back home, like kids at 35 years old moving back in with their parents, and people saying like, oh, like it's humiliating, this, that, whatever. It was, the situation. This was years ago. This was before people got free money for doing nothing. And so back then, having those situations and people moving back at like 35 and this and that, and people feeling like, oh, I should feel down and this. And it was like, no, I mean, it's expensive. Listen, when I got my house, full disclosure, I had spent so much money in rent that I didn't have any money to put down on the house. I had the credit, but I didn't have any money to put down on the house. And the person that I was married to at the time, she had no credit and no money. So, but she wanted the house. And I told her, there's like rules to getting a house. You can't just be like, I want a house, give me a house. And so we had to have, the blessing of family to say, hey, you guys have everything else you need. Let us give you some money down on the house. And, that definitely helped out to get it. But I don't know how people do it, because I said to my mom and my dad, the amount of money that I spent in rent would have been my down payment on the house. And it's this like catch 22 that unless you're independently wealthy, a trust fund baby, or you make like a ton of money, you can't have an apartment and save money to get a house. You have to either live at home and save money, or, I mean, you got to figure it out some type of way where you can save where you're somewhere else. And, I'm happy you brought it up because, obviously this shows where sports meets life, and we talk about this stuff all the time, but people need that, that you need to kind of, if you want to get a house, especially in today's world, you probably have to move in with family, work a job or two, save your money, and then go out that way. Because if I told you the amount of money that I spent on an apartment, Brendan, in Syracuse, you would have thought I was living in like Palm Beach, because their justification of, oh yeah, we're going to raise it to like $1,500 a month. I don't pay that in mortgage. So it's, I had to move out, kind of whether I wanted to or not. But it's this weird kind of double-edged sword of like, rent's too expensive, you can't save money, but then you don't have any money to buy a house. So it's like, how do people ever get ahead unless they live at home? So, in my opinion, I would say take nothing of negativity in being at home with the family. Save your money. You're a smart kid. You're a good person. So save your dough, get it right, go find yourself a place without throwing money into the fire, which is what you do when you rent. Greg said, not too many Jets fans going to be overly proud to rock a Zach Wilson throwback jersey. Maybe a mom or two, but that's about it, is what he wrote in. So,
oh my God, that's great.
So I gotta know, Mike White, he had to fill in last year, right? And he had to have some moments where he was out there. Was there a time where you thought to yourself, because I know you don't like Zach Wilson, so take Zach out of it, but was there a time where you thought to yourself, hey, there's something about Mike White that I like. There's a way he plays. There's something he does with his arm motion, his footwork, his vision. Did you what I'm asking is, did you see his success last year before other people saw this year?
Just watching him last year, first of all, he was a different player this year than he was last year.
Yeah.
Last year, he's a guy who barely ever saw the field in the NFL and came in and played half a game against the Patriots in which you were getting blown out. Yeah. You beat the eventual AFC champion Bills at home in a game that I think was their first win or their second win, maybe. I don't remember, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah. I kind of try and forget about that season. But, the way he plays, it's like a bulldog mentality, right? So just watching him over the last 2 years, just looking at last year, though, he played well. He had a great game against Cincinnati. He played great in the first quarter against the Colts before he got hurt. And that was pretty much the story of Mike White. And he throws the 4 interceptions against the Bills, and you think, all right, the fairy tale's over until this year. And he's the third string quarterback to start the year.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that was intentional, because I think if Mike White was the backup and Zach Wilson was struggling, then or let's just say he was the backup and played the first 3 weeks and they played well, then, it might be hard to go back to Zach Wilson. But with Joe Flacco, it's like, all right, we can easily go back to Zach.
Yeah.
And then after Wilson got healthy, we said, all right, let's move Mike White up to the number 2 spot on the depth chart. And then Wilson gets benched. Mike White comes in, plays great against the Bears. And the thing I like about Mike White really is the way he's perceived in the locker room. Yeah. The guys love him. I don't remember which game it was, but there was a week where the players literally all came into the game wearing Mike White t-shirts.
Yeah.
It was great. I mean, the fans got behind him. The fans loved him. The players loved him. The coaches loved him. And he was just a guy that everyone can get behind. Hence me buying the jersey.
Yeah.
I mean, just watching him play this year compared to last year, he was a completely different player. I mean, watching him in that Bills game. Now, for the record, during that Bills game, I had just gotten up to Killington, Vermont. I was going up there for a ski event.
Yeah.
And I was up there. I made sure to get up there before the game because I did not want to, miss part of the game on the way there. So I was sitting in a little bar in Killington, watching the game with some couple of Patriots fans and some Bills fans. 1 or 2 Jets fans were in there too. And then we're just watching him play, and we're like we're watching him get like pancaked and killed in his ribs, and we're just like, especially after the second hit. After he got hit the second time, we're looking at it, and I'm thinking, there's no way in hell he's coming back into this game. But somehow, some way, he does it, and very nearly leads them back to winning the game. All right, and we'd already beaten the Bills once this year, so who was to say we couldn't do it again? But I mean, that's my story on Mike White. I mean, I love Mike White. I'd love to see him back, but at the same time, it kills me to say it. He is not the answer at quarterback. Great backup, but he will not be the starter next year.
So here's the question: where do you think the Jets will go at quarterback, and where do you think they should go? And are those answers the same?
Well, before they fired Mike LaFleur.
Yeah.
Wrong brother. My answer was a unanimous Jimmy Garoppolo because it's basically the same Shanahan offense that he ran in San Francisco all those years. Guy knows how to win. And I mean, I've liked him since he was on the Patriots. I ultimately think that's a landing spot that makes sense for him. Going back to New England, but at the time before they fired LaFleur, I'm thinking, Jimmy Garoppolo is the one that makes the most sense. And I said, as soon as we knew that Wilson wasn't going to be the guy, I'm like, all right, Jimmy G's our guy. That's who I want. Now, yes, there's injury concerns, and he's not he's not this elite quarterback, but he knows how to win football games. He just plays within himself. He doesn't try and do too much. For me, it's basically like thinking of Mike White, just a better player.
Okay.
So doesn't try and force things, doesn't do too much, checks down a lot, but knows how to win football games. That's what quarterbacks are able to do in the Shanahan offense, and that's why Brock Purdy's been so successful for the Niners so far since he's started playing. Because they're not trying to have him do too much. He's being, I don't want to say conservative, but he's being able to make plays.
Right.
But after they did fire LaFleur, I'm thinking now it kind of depends on the coordinator, who you bring in. But I'll give you something too here because my buddy Jake Schuster, a Marywood alum, who some of you might know, sent me a text in my group chat that I have with him and one of our other friends, Anthony Navarro. They sent me a list of about 20 quarterbacks and said, just rank these guys in the order in which you would want them, based purely off of who you want on this team. And I'm just going to run you down the list that I had.
Okay.
Now, it could have since been updated. Some of these names are unrealistic. Some of these names are a little random and wouldn't really be starters. But These were the names he gave me. This is the order in which I ranked them.
Okay.
The first name on here, and I'm actually going to talk about it for a second, was Aaron Rodgers. Now, do I think he is traded from Green Bay? Probably not. It's a huge cap hit for them if they decide to move away from him.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you saw Joe Namath come out this week and say he would want the Jets to unretire number 12 for Aaron Rodgers to come and play in New York.
Well,
now, that would be awesome.
You also, with that last game in Green Bay at Lambeau, when they lost to the Lions, you see that Aaron Rodgers spent a really long time. I said that it looked like when you have senior day for college football, and they stay on the field and they walk around and they look at the field for a long time, shake hands with the fans and stuff. I said he's doing his senior day walk right now like he's leaving Green Bay. A year after he signs this mega contract, which never really made sense to me because it seemed like it was a really bad marriage and they didn't want to be together. It was like watching a couple that you're like, oh, they're definitely going to get divorced or they're going to kill each other. And then all of a sudden, like Aaron Rodgers shows up with a new ring on his finger worth like $3 million. And you're like, I thought you guys were breaking up. It's like, no, I love him. I love him so much. And I don't know. That marriage doesn't make sense to me. They paid him all that money, but he doesn't, from the outside looking in, I don't see them happy. I don't see him happy. I don't know. I don't see the Green Bay. And I have gone on record saying this, and I'll say it over and over and over again. He will never win another Super Bowl in Green Bay because he costs way too much. They can't bring in the guys they want. And the telltale sign to me was Devontae Adams leaving 3 days later after he signed that contract.
Well, yeah, because they didn't have the money to pay Devontae.
Right. And that's
plain and simple.
And say what you want to say about the man, Tom Brady. He knew to take less money so he could build a franchise. He could build a team around him. So, Aaron Rodgers to me, and listen, Pat Mahomes makes a little bit more than Aaron Rodgers, those two like $50 million a year deals or whatever. But it seems like Pat Mahomes has a respect of his teammates, where in the Aaron Rodgers world, it feels more like Mariah Carey. And it seems more dramatic. And I don't know. I mean, I've always liked Aaron Rodgers, but I'll tell you, Brennan, last 2 years, with all this like drama and him calling out,
love you.
And this is how I am. If I was an offensive lineman and you went out publicly and you called me out and you told the world, not me, you didn't come to me in the locker room. If you went out and you said, hey, Dan Tortora needs to get his blocking right because it's BS and I don't like it, the next game, they hike the ball, I would move to the side, let them get blown up. I'd do it a second time, let them get blown up again.
Lovie Smith, sorry, Cal McNair takes that first-round pick and sends it
then to me, I would go
to Soldier Field.
I
The Bears have their quarterback.
We have just looking at the draft picture. I don't know what was going on. But anyways, so people trying to interrupt.
Yeah.
But Aaron Rodgers is like, that's enough. But no, I would let him get blown up once. Then I'd let him get blown up a second time. I'd go over. I would put my hand out. I'd lift him up off the ground, and I would say, do I suck as an offensive lineman? Do we want to keep that narrative? Because if you have a problem with me, you talk to me. You don't talk to the media. You don't talk to the world. You talk to me. If you don't want to talk to me and you want to keep talking the way you're talking, I'll be here all day, and you're going to get sacked about 57 times. That would have been my way of dealing with Aaron Rodgers. Because those wide receivers, I'll tell you straight up, if I was Christian Watson and I walked into that as a rookie, and he was like, these receivers don't know. 2 years now, these receivers don't know how to. And you're saying it publicly. You want to light a fire under their butt? Talk to me. Because if you said to me in the media, but not to me, and I'm Christian Watson, people don't know how to run routes, I can't do anything with these receivers, why would I want to play with you? And I think what Aaron Rodgers needs to realize is you're talented, but there are other guys that are just as talented, if not more talented, that aren't divas. And he's a diva now. And to be completely honest about the whole situation, I wouldn't want Aaron Rodgers on my team. Because I don't want to deal with the BS with him.
That's fair. I mean, in my eyes, though, just looking at it from a Jets perspective, I feel like if he had like a change of scenery, being out of Green Bay, where clearly I don't want to say clearly he doesn't want to be there, but you can kind of tell he's either going to retire, or probably play somewhere else.
Right.
But at the same time, it's a huge cap hit for the Packers. Are they really going to want to trade him? Or are they going to almost ultimately force him to retire? that kind of makes more sense. But I mean, for me, I've always loved Aaron Rodgers. I think he's, and Mahomes will probably pass him, if not already, somewhat soon. I think he's the most talented player to ever play quarterback. Now, I'm not saying he is the GOAT, because he is not. That is Tom Brady, but there's a difference. Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback. Brady was the best quarterback. So I'd kind of preface it with that. Now, I haven't updated this list since LaFleur got fired, so I still had Jimmy G as my second favorite.
Okay.
But I still like Jimmy G. I would still love to have Jimmy Garoppolo on this team, but it's going to depend on what they do with offensive coordinator. The third, fifth, and sixth are pipe dreams.
Okay.
Tom Brady was number 3 on my list. That's a pipe dream.
Mm-hmm.
I've always said that, Tom Brady could cement his legacy if he goes to win the Super Bowl with the Jets. Now, I don't think he would come to New York, because he's been on record as saying he does not like the Jets. He's not a fan of Jets fans. I don't think he'll go to New York. I think he's going to go to Vegas, to be perfectly honest, reunite with Josh McDaniels. That makes the most sense for him. Derek Carr is the next name. I think that's probably what's going to happen.
Okay.
I think that's the one that's going to make the most sense.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because he's got an out in the Raiders have an out in his contract that if 3 years after the Super Bowl, or 3 days after the Super Bowl, if they cut him, they're free. They don't owe him anything.
Yeah.
So he'll either be traded or cut in those 3 days, most likely. I feel like he'd probably end up getting cut because he has the no trade clause, and teams aren't going to be willing to give up, a mid-round draft pick that the Raiders are going to want for him. Because I'm willing to bet the Raiders are going to want an earlier pick, and that's just not going to happen. The next 2 names, like I said, are pipe. Then I put Mike White. Daniel Jones was next, and I might get a lot of hate for the next one. Lamar Jackson is the next name I have on that list, and he's basically the last real starter that's on this list.
Okay.
And you know why? Because I hate Lamar Jackson.
Okay.
I think he's not a good quarterback. I think he's a poor man's Michael Vick. I think he should stay in Baltimore, and I mean, his game's not going to age. We saw it with Michael Vick. Now, granted, Michael Vick had to go to prison in between that. Moving down the list a little bit, Gardner Minshew, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill. Minshew's probably, a mid. I mean, he's probably more of a backup than a starter, but I loved him in Jacksonville. I thought he was cool. I love the story of him, breaking his hand so that he can get an extra year of eligibility in college. That was pretty funny. But Kirk Cousins and Tannehill are kind of past their prime. We know primetime Kirk is not a good player, so I don't think he can win a Super Bowl with him. Baker Mayfield, Cooper Rush, those are kind of weird names that he had on the list.
Yeah.
And then Will Levis probably should be higher on this list, but because there's an outside chance that the Colts may trade up to get him at number 1. But he's a great player. I watched him when they played when Kentucky played Florida the last 2 years, and he impressed me. So he looked like a very good player. Geno Smith, Teddy Bridgewater are basically the same player. No reason to bring those guys back. The Gators quarterback, Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
While I love him as a Gator, he's basically going to be like a worse version of Lamar Jackson. And it kills me to say that because I love him. I love watching him at Florida, but he's basically going to be a worse version of Lamar. Now, I hope he proves me wrong. I really do, because he's got all the talent in the world. But I would not waste a first-round pick on him. I mean, if he falls into round 2, maybe you do what they did with Geno Smith back in the day. But the rest of these names on this list are kind of irrelevant. Like Tyler Huntley, Mason Rudolph, Matt Ryan, Joe Flacco, and then Zach Wilson was on the list too. So I made sure to put, after Joe Flacco, anyone else on planet Earth, and then Zach Wilson. So that was the list. That was pretty. I thought that was kind of funny.
No, and I appreciate that. I like that you ran it down like that. I appreciate that they sent you over that to provoke it. But this is what we're doing here on the show this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. It's kind of morphed into this, is that I'm basically putting Brendan on the hot seat on his Jets. After the break, he's going to put me on the hot seat and ask me questions about the Jaguars. We have no idea what each other are going to ask each other. That's why That's what makes good live TV and live radio, is that we said we would talk about our teams, but we didn't say what we were going to ask. So I want to stay with this for a second because I like Lamar Jackson. Now, I covered Lamar Jackson when he was in Louisville, interviewed Bobby Petrino when he was his coach. And I was one of the guys that said Lamar Jackson's going to make it in the NFL. He's going to be a quarterback. He's not going to have to change positions. Like, he's going to be all right. Now, here's my thing with Lamar Jackson. I like him. He's talented. There's another side, though. The other side is, and this goes off what Papa Joe says on the show all the time, because he's a running quarterback, he puts himself in the situation of getting hurt. So I look at Lamar Jackson sometimes and I say, okay, this guy is an electrifying weapon who can get you double-digit wins and get you into the playoffs. The other side of that is I'm like, this guy is like RG3, and I'm terrified that he's going to helicopter out of bounds and get knocked. So the Lamar Jackson conundrum to me is I defend him as a talented player. I think he's good to have on your team as a weapon. I'm not saying he has the best arm, but I'm also not saying he doesn't have an arm. But my thing with Lamar Jackson is because he runs the way he does, look at what happened this year, he's not on the field when you need him the most. The other part of the Lamar Jackson issue for me is if he really thinks he should be the highest paid quarterback or one of the top paid quarterbacks in the NFL, he is mistaken. And so for a team to bring him in, now listen, I'm not saying don't go get your money, right? You go get your money. But what I'm saying is, as a general manager, if Lamar Jackson came and sat with me and said, Dan Tortora, I should be paid more than Pat Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers, I would chuckle to myself and say no. So that's my Lamar Jackson issue, is that I will defend him as a player and as a weapon, but I'm also concerned about his injury side of things and the fact that he runs the way he does because, like I said, RG3. And then the other part of that is my concern of if he's really asking for that top dollar, that to me is like Zeke Elliott telling me that he should be the highest paid running back. I would laugh and move on. So depending on what Lamar Jackson wants, I think is going to kind of dictate what happens to him. Yes, he can hold the Ravens hostage and say, what are you going to do without me? But if you go and you look at the draft order this year and where the Ravens are at, now your Jets are 13. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the Ravens, as far as where they're going to be drafting, they will be down here a bit in the draft, and they're actually not going to be drafting their first pick until it's in the 20s here, 23. So they'll be the 23rd pick, and they said going into this year from last year, this is the year of quarterbacks. There's going to be quarterbacks. There's guys to get. But do I think they draft one? Probably not. Now, Tyler Huntley played a pretty darn good game, and outside of a fumble on the 1-yard line, they're arguably going to beat Cincinnati. So, you
can't even blame him for that, though.
No. And the thing is, if Huntley's playing that way, now granted, he didn't look like a great passer, but at the end of the day, he could get the ball down the field. He could get the ball down the field, placement of it, questionable, but getting it down there, having the arm strength is definitely there. So, I think the Ravens are in a unique situation. I will defend Lamar Jackson, like I said, as a weapon. But there are things that concern me, and there's no way in hell that I'd pay him as a top 3 quarterback because I think that's nuts. Because as a top 3 quarterback, you would have to have the arms that I see other guys have. The Aaron Rodgers arm, the Pat Mahomes arm, the Josh Allen arm. Joe Burrow, I would even go and say Jimmy Garoppolo healthy is, he's living in a different world as far as his arm strength and his ability. So I will defend Lamar to a certain extent, but I won't defend the money that allegedly he wants. I will ask you this. 13th overall pick. What position do you take?
Best available offensive lineman.
Okay.
That's my pick.
Okay.
It makes the most sense. That was the biggest issue for the Jets this year outside of the quarterback position. And this team is not built for, we do not need to bring in another rookie quarterback and have him flop again. This will be 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Now, Darnold, I don't think is a complete flop yet. I mean, he flopped with the Jets, but he played well down the stretch for the Panthers. I give him all the credit in the world. I still like Sam Darnold. I think he could still be a successful quarterback in this league. Not like a superstar or anything, but he could still be a good quarterback.
Yeah.
Wilson's got no hope for the future. He stinks. But I think you got to go offensive line.
Okay.
I mean, the other option might be, take the wide receiver from Ohio State. What's his name? Jackson something? Jackson Smith and Jiba, is that how you say his name? I think.
Yeah, for Ohio State, let me see here. So if he's still available, pardon me.
If he's still there, that makes sense.
Right.
I mean, pair him with Garrett Wilson. I mean, that's an electrifying duo at
Right.
the top at receiver. Now, I don't think they're going to go that way.
So you're talking about
I mean, you got
Jackson
Garrett
Smith,
Wilson.
Jackson Smith and Jiba?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's the thing, and I don't know how you felt about this going into the season, and I don't even know if you know this, but two things. Number one, I said Garrett Wilson was going to become the starter because there was nobody good enough in the wide receiving core for the Jets that were going to beat him out. And fantasy football wise, if you drafted him and you listen to me, he did well by you. So I want to get your thoughts on that if you thought he was going to be the number one or the starter going into the season. And then secondly, I don't know if you know this, but my Jaguars are a different shade of green. We're teal, and you're obviously forest green. But I was channeling the Jets better than any other team in the draft, and I literally predicted their first 4 draft picks. I don't know if you know that, but I predicted where they were going to go.
I remember talking to you about that last year.
So I want to get your thoughts on if you saw the same things draft-wise in 2022. Like if you saw them going out and getting what they got, moving on from Michael Carter, getting Breece Hall and all that, and if you thought Garrett Wilson was going to step up and be the number one guy as a rookie.
So I said Garrett Wilson from the start. I mean, when I would have drafted him at 4 personally. Now at the time, I wanted either Garrett Wilson or Kayvon Thibodeau.
Okay.
I did not want Sauce Gardner.
Okay.
That is I have had a complete change of heart since then. I now have a Sauce Gardner jersey in my closet. He is an awesome player.
Yeah.
Seems like
I could have told you that.
Seems like one of those. Yeah. And I love the quote that Darrelle Revis said about him. He basically called called Sauce Gardner him, but with Antonio Cromartie's length.
Okay.
That's big praise from the guy, from the soon to be first ballot Hall of Famer. And for the record, if Darrelle Revis is not part of the Hall of Fame class of this year, there's something wrong. I mean, the dude's the best corner that any of us have ever seen outside of maybe Deion Sanders.
Revis,
but
yeah,
oh yeah. I mean, I think it was maybe 2009 or 2010. I can't remember which year it was, but they played like Calvin Johnson, Chad Ochocinco, some of the best receivers in the NFL. He shut down every single one of them.
Yeah.
It was unreal. And it's not like he was fast, and it's not like he was big either. He was like 5'10" or 5'11", and he wasn't all that fast, but he was an unbelievable corner. But if Sauce Gardner's anything like Darrelle Revis was, we're going to be in good shape for a long, long time. But so that was number 4.
Okay.
Number 10, as soon as they went with Sauce at number 10, at number 4, I knew it had to be Garrett Wilson. I mean, you had other options. I mean, did Olave go? Was that 9 or 11? I couldn't remember.
I think.
Were the Saints before or after the Jets?
I think Olave went after.
I think he went 9.
Wait, hold on. Let me think about that.
Because the Jets were 10th.
Let me think about this. Because I predicted Olave
Let me find
so
it.
now
Let me find out now.
Now I got to think about it.
Let's see.
He was 11. It was 11.
11. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was basically
it
between him and
trade.
Olave.
It was a trade.
That's right. Yeah, that was right. So it was basically between Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave.
Yeah.
I liked Wilson better. I mean, I thought he was just a better player. And both of them to their have been very good this year.
Yeah.
I think Wilson has been a tick better. I think Wilson deserves the offensive rookie of the year, personally. I mean, that's got some Jets bias in there, but at the same time, the Jets very easily could sweep the rookies of the year with those two guys. Sauce is a lock to win defensive rookie of the year. And then offensive, I mean, it's going to be between Garrett Wilson, Kenneth Walker, and Chris Olave. So I I personally would take Garrett Wilson, but that's just me. But I love that pick at 10. And then at 23 or 20, I think it was 23, they trade back into the first round and take Jermaine Johnson. Now, Jermaine Johnson didn't do a ton this year. I think they were trying to develop him a little bit more because he was probably a little bit more, he was a little more raw. It was a guy that they loved his talent, but they weren't quite sure if he was going to be ready this year.
Yeah.
I mean, he did a lot behind Carl Lawson. I mean, he learned a lot from Carl Lawson and John Franklin Myers and played well when he was out on the field. I mean, I think he's going to be a good player for a long time, but apparently the Jets were looking at him at 10 and were shocked that he kept falling. So he kind of just fell into their lap.
Yeah.
And then you have Breece Hall in the second round. I didn't think they'd go running back. I didn't necessarily think they needed, but once I saw Breece Hall's highlights, that's when I understood. I'm like, okay, this guy's a dude.
A lot of big numbers.
So I love that pick.
Yeah, that was my four. I mean, when they traded back in to the first round, I was like, oh, Jermaine Johnson, because I had interviewed him when he was at Florida State, when he transferred to Florida State, and I interviewed him, and I was like, all right, that pick makes sense. And I was walking around, and I said Sauce, and I said Garrett Wilson, and then I was in Pizza Man Pub, and I walked by 50 Oswego Street. I was there last night watching the Bills game with the Beeville Bills backers. Awesome time. Despite the loss, awesome time to be with good people. So I'm out there at Pizza Man. I was walking from my right to my left. I remember this. I'm walking by the TV screen. I was like, I think I was coming out of the bathroom. And I looked up. I was like, oh, the Jets traded back in Jermaine Johnson. And I walked away like it was a drop the mic thing. Like I just knew it and it was over. I was like, oh, Jermaine. And I carried on with my life. And then the second round, I'm like, oh, Breece Hall. Like it all made, and it got to the point where it was laughable, where I'm like, am I connected to the wrong shade of green right now? Because here I am, I'm a Jaguars fan,
Maybe.
but I'm calling the Jets picks, and I said without doubt, and I know a lot of people seconded this afterward and talked about it for weeks, but I got on the thing early and I said the Jets had the best draft. They had the best draft of 32 teams, and I said arguably the Jets rookies and second-year players are their best players. Like the youngest players on the Jets roster this season were arguably the best assets they have. So that's good for the future, obviously.
And that's the reason why I think Aaron Rodgers makes a lot of sense for this team. I mean, because you put him in this situation where you could still pay him all the money he wants,
Right.
and you got a lot of guys on rookie deals, on cheap rookie deals. Breece Hall is on a real, he was great until he got hurt, and I'm hoping to God that he comes back from the ACL and plays at the same level that he did. But just watching him play this year was fun to watch. But just as a whole, outside of the Zach Wilson pick, Joe Douglas has killed the draft. I mean, just looking back at 2020.
Yeah.
Now, Mekhi Becton, when he played, was great. He's been hurt the last couple of years. Not really Joe Douglas's fault. They took Michael Carter in 2021. They took, I'm really losing it right now, but they Michael Carter the second too has developed into a really good nickel corner that they took in, I think, the fourth round. They took, obviously this year's draft, they killed it. I'm really drawing a blank on their draft from last year right now. That's how much I forgot about last season. Let me look up again who was on that draft. It was in that draft class.
I'm looking at the money at this point. And
here we go.
Michael Carter is making a little over $1 million, just so people know. Actually, no. Michael Carter, is making under $1 million a season, $952,000 and some change. Breece Hall is making $2.25 million a year, and some of the other ones here. Jermaine Johnson's making $3.2. Garrett Wilson's making a little over $5 million a year. Your highest Sauce is making a little over $8 million. Your highest paid average salary is C.J. Mosley, $17 million. Carl Lawson, a DN, $15 million after that. John Franklin Myers, another DN, $13.75 million. And offensive guard Laken Tomlinson, $13 million. So a lot of your money is locked up in the trenches on the offensive and defensive line.
Yeah, and the first two names you mentioned in there with the big money with Carl Lawson and C.J. Mosley, um, Carl Lawson could definitely be a cap casualty. He's definitely a guy that the Jets are going to look at and or trade for a quarterback, whatever they decide to do. And the same can be said with C.J. Mosley. I mean, they restructured his contract last year, I believe, so he may not necessarily want to do that again. So, I mean, he might be a guy that you have to cut and hope you can re-sign him or see if he'd be willing to restructure again. And it's sad because he's the captain of that defense, and he had a really good year this year, but he's not worth the $17.5 million that they're paying him, without question. Lincoln Tomlinson was paid to be, a good interior offensive lineman for the Jets.
Yeah.
He was not good this year at all. The other names that I was forgetting in that draft, the main one was Elijah Vera Tucker.
Okay.
And he's another guy that got hurt, interior offensive lineman. They actually swung him out to the tackle position for a little while this year. And he played that well, too, so he could probably play either or. But, there's going to be some things that they're going to need to do with the cap in order to make a quarterback work. But you're right. Like we kind of said, they basically have a lot of young talent that is not getting paid a lot.
Right.
Their window to win is right now with a good quarterback.
Yeah, because you're not going to be able to re-sign Sauce for $8 million. You're not going to re-sign Garrett Wilson for $5 million. But here's another question for you. Corey Davis, Western Michigan alum. Do you keep Corey Davis? Now, he is a free agent in 2024. He signed a 3-year deal for almost $40 million. He's making $12.5 million. Do you restructure that with Garrett Wilson now? What do you do?
I think you could cut him. I mean, it's sad because he's a good player, but I mean, with Garrett Wilson now at the number 1, I think you can cut him because that'll give Elijah Moore some more reps. He wants that, and when he's been getting catches, he's been a good player. So you want to get him back involved as much as you possibly can. And then you still got Denzel Mims, who you don't really know what you have in him. He's probably going to be like a number 3 or number 4 receiver. Not necessarily what you draft him to be, but still a decent player. Has a little case of the drops sometimes, but ridiculously fast. So if you get him on a deep route, forget it. Like if he can catch the ball, that's going to be a good one for him. But I think there's other guys that you can go out and sign that could make sense. There's a lot of free agents this year. I haven't looked at the receiver class yet, but I know there's some good names in there that you can sign. And you don't need to go to the top of the market either because you got Garrett Wilson. He's your number 1 receiver for years to come. You can go to the middle tier, honestly, in the Corey Davis tier and find somebody who's going to be a serviceable number 2 receiver or number 3 receiver, however you decide that you want to work it. My other idea was maybe taking a receiver in round 2 or round 3 of the draft that you like.
Yeah.
Another guy to develop. Maybe like you got Elijah Moore, who's a slot receiver. Maybe you find a bigger guy, like a guy that you can throw it up to in the red zone. Other than Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson's not exactly the world's biggest wide receiver. But I think that would make sense as a direction for them to go. But like I said before, that first pick has to be an offensive lineman for sure. Because that's where they struggled the most. They allowed a ton of sacks. Yeah. Mike White almost died back there, by getting hit as many times as he did. But that's kind of what they have to do. But before we move on to anything else, I kind of want to go back on a point that you had mentioned before with the Ravens at pick 23.
Yeah.
If they move off Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson is the perfect fit for that team. That's the team that I think he could go to and succeed. Without a question.
Well, and the thing is, that's what they do, right? They had RG3 for a little while. They have Tyler Huntley. They brought in guys to mirror Lamar Jackson, to parallel him in some way, so that they could run the same offense, right? That all strings of their quarterbacks were going to be tethered to the same style of offense. And that, to me, it makes sense. The Lamar Jackson issue, it's the same thing I think about with Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers in the sense of if both sides aren't happy, what are we doing? Because if Lamar Jackson, and this is the other thing too, Lamar Jackson didn't play, right? He didn't play toward the end of the season. He was hurt. But then the playoffs come around and he's hurt. And the question was, how hurt is he? And how much is he like, I'm not going to put my body on the line because I'm a free agent and you haven't paid me yet. Now, my issue that I have with that, and I can look at both sides of this thing. Now, as a broadcaster, you look at it from the coaching side, or you're supposed to look at it from all angles. From the player side, if I'm Lamar Jackson, I don't want to get hurt, especially if this team's not going to keep me. But from the coaching perspective and the team perspective, I would not want Lamar Jackson to be my quarterback. Let's just, for argument's sake, if Lamar Jackson was healthy enough to play in the playoff game against Cincinnati and he didn't, the other 52 men on that roster, I wouldn't be surprised if they're like, he's not my quarterback. I don't want to play for him because he didn't play when he could have played and he left us out there to die. Now, because when you are the quarterback, you are the captain of the ship. You're supposed to be the last one to go down with the ship, not the first one to jump off. So that to me is an issue. But what type of offseason are you going into? Because if you haven't made a deal with Lamar Jackson, are you looking and hoping that somebody falls to you? Are you trying to trade up and bring somebody in? What's kind of the mentality of where you're going right now? By the way, and I just have to say this because I get enough mention of this, just so people know. Caleb Williams is insane. Like this man.
Next year's number one pick.
To me, watching him play, a guy who is rushed out of the pocket and doesn't run out of the pocket. And Phil, we're going to talk about your Niners in a little bit. Congratulations, sir. But in the situation with Caleb Williams in that game against Tulane, I was there for the Cotton Bowl, watching that man unfazed by everything. You're in the middle of the field. You get rushed out of the pocket. He goes left, and he's literally doing it like it's practice. He's moving his feet a little bit. He's not even concerned. This guy's running at him full speed, and he's just like, move a little. Okay, he's getting close. Move a little bit farther. He goes to the sideline, turns his body, sets his feet, and throws a dart down the field. And who does that? I mean, honestly, Caleb Williams, to me, whoever ends up with that pick in 2024, God bless you. Because that man, seeing him, and granted, they lost that game, but, their defense didn't hold up. He is insanely confident, poised, footwork, arm strength, vision. I don't know if I can name a lot of people that I can see get rushed out of a pocket and look like they're like throwing the football with one hand, eating a sandwich with the other, and checking their Twitter account. Like, I don't know how that man does what he does, but I just want to let people know when he is available, I'm excited to see what he looks like in the NFL.
Yeah, he will, without question, be the number one overall pick next year. And I think he's going to get a lot of attention the way Trevor Lawrence did. Now, Trevor Lawrence, when he got to Clemson and had that first year where he won the national championship, everyone knew he was going to be the number one pick in 2 years. Everybody knew it.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams, maybe that didn't necessarily seem that way in his first year at Oklahoma, but this year going to USC, you absolutely saw it. He will be the number one pick next year. And I'll tell you right now, if the Colts don't land a quarterback this year, like if they don't trade up to number one and get Will Levis, or they don't land anybody, they're going to get him. And I know that would make Sean, who's our center manager at Golf Tech Lehigh Valley, that would make him very happy because he's a big Colts fan, and I'm sure he would love to have Caleb Williams on his team.
Yeah, it's crazy. Awesome player. Final note here for the Jets. We're here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, smelling as good as ever thanks to Witty Wicks and their awesome candles. I tell you, folks, I love the candles. I love the smell. I'd buy them just for that. But they actually help my allergies. This one, Namaste at Home, helps me in such a big-time way. And my allergies are awful with weather changing. So I keep this right here, right by me. I just got this one, and you can see it's halfway gone, because I light them all day long. So make sure you get out to Witty Wicks today. Go to wittywicks.com for those of you out of town. 190 Township Boulevard in Camillus for Witty Wicks on site right in front of Movie Tavern. So final question about your Jets before we take a fast break and get into my Jaguars, and you can put me on the hot seat. I want to know, the Jets were 7-10, obviously, but I want you to tell me how close you think they were, in your opinion, of making the postseason.
They were right there. I mean, they were the 6 seed they were the 5 seed for a while. I mean, when they were 7-4, I was picking out teams that I would want and I wanted to and didn't want to play.
Yeah.
7-4. And to be honest with you, I'm like, all right, Mike White's going to get us to the playoffs. We may not win a game, but we're going to get to the playoffs. Like, we're going to be playing meaningful football in December. Like, that doesn't happen. I mean, when's the last time the Mets and the Jets were in the playoffs in the same year? I don't know. I don't think I've been alive to see it. But that would have been a cool thing for me. But I think they were close. They were very, very, very close. And had Mike White not gotten basically killed in that Bills game, I think they would have made the playoffs. If Mike White does not hurt in that game, I think they end up with at least 9 wins, possibly even 10, and win that game. I think they would have beaten Seattle. I think they would have beaten Detroit. Jaguars, I think they could have won that game, but it would have been a really good game. It would have been a better game than it was. Because the defense played well in that game against the Jags. Yeah. The offense just didn't do anything. So, I mean, if Mike White plays that game, I feel like the Jets could have won that game easily. So that puts you at 10 wins. That's 10-7. That would have given you. Did we have the tiebreaker of the Chargers? I don't know if we had the tiebreaker of the Chargers. I don't know for sure if we did. That would have given us either the 5 or the 6 seed, and we would have played either Cincinnati, who probably would have lost to, or Buffalo. And actually, no, Buffalo would have played the 7. We would have played Cincinnati or Jacksonville. And honestly, we could have, I think we could have beaten Jacksonville/Tennessee, because I don't know if that would have, I think that would have maybe changed the outcome of that division. But, I think they probably don't win a playoff game, but they would have gotten there, without a doubt, if Mike White did not get hurt.
Yeah, Zach Wilson in that game, Chris Streveler, and Jaguars 19-3 on the road in that matchup, getting it done.
That was the funny part. Chris Streveler played in that game.
He did. He ran.
Nothing against Chris Streveler.
Ran it and he threw it.
But, he made a throw to C.J. Uzama. If that throw was even remotely close to being a good throw, C.J. Uzama would have walked in for a touchdown. But the throw was horrendous. Chris Streveler, I don't want to say he has a noodle arm, but he does not have a very good arm. Well, now, another coach at Golf Tech, Lehigh Valley, is a big Streveler guy. He loved him in the preseason, Brian. But, sorry, Brian, I don't think Streveler's going to work out.
I wanted to make a very healthy note that there was a time where the Jets had all of their quarterbacks injured when Ray Lucas, I think, got hurt, and they had to go to their punter, Tom Tupa, who had a valiant effort and multiple touchdowns in that game. And because of Tom Tupa, I will never count a punter out from playing quarterback. Thank you, Tom. So
that's true. I've seen the YouTube video where they talk about that. They did a little mini documentary about that. Saw it a couple of years ago. I thought it was really cool.
It was a really good game. So we will take a step aside for a fast break. When we come back here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora from inside the Cafe Kubal studios, Brendan and I will switch from his Jets to my Jaguars, from Jet up to Duval, and we'll get into my thoughts on the Jaguars as their season ended over the weekend. What do I think about all of it? Well, Brendan will put me on the hot seat. He gets to ask the questions. I get to give the answers, and we'll find out what I have to say about it right after this on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Avicoli's, located on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, has been your trusted neighbor for decades. Located just steps from Liverpool High School, we're happy to have the Liverpool Warriors on-site, on-location broadcast at Avicoli's through Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every single month, featuring student athletes, coaches, and administration throughout the year from Liverpool High School. Head out to Avicoli's today on the corner of Route 57 and Wetzel Road in Liverpool, New York, open Tuesday Tuesday through Sunday for lunch, dinner, and drinks. We'd love to see you out there. And of course, you can call them at 315-622-5100 for takeout, delivery, and catering. That's 315-622-5100. And also find them on myavocollis.com. That's myAVICOLLIS.com. Having peace of mind when you're out of town that your furry-loving friend is safe and sound means taking them to Canine Campground, because we all know that when it comes to the love of our pets, it goes well beyond the call of duty to make sure they're safe and sound. Right, Lily? So take a ride to 242 Johnson Street in East Syracuse, New York, and see Canine Campground and where your dog will be staying, in the classic cabin, the executive cabin, the grand cabin, or of course the luxury cabin, because if you know Lily, you know she loves luxury. Now you don't have to wait to the last minute to find a family member or a friend that'll take your dog for a few days. Call Canine Campground at 315-299-4013. That's 315-299-4013. Their drop-off and pickup times are Monday through Sunday. Check K9campground.com for more information. That's the letter K, the number 9, and campground spelled with a K.com. K9campground.com.
When you're going out of town, bring your dog to Canine Campground.
PB&J's Lunchbox, the food truck that you love finding all throughout central and upstate New York, now has a street-side cafe. So when you're craving their traditional favorites as well as their out-of-box amazing menu items, you can now head to 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. Located just minutes from the highway, the Thruway, Destiny USA, and Onondaga Lake Parkway, PB&J's Lunchbox Street-Side Cafe is there for you Monday through Saturday from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner all throughout the day. Get breakfast for dinner, dinner for lunch, whatever you fancy, including their award-winning grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Find them at 663 Old Liverpool Road in Liverpool, New York. PB&J's Lunchbox, where we love to know what's in your lunchbox. This is a special message from 317 at Montgomery restaurant owner Joel Carpenter. Open Tuesday through Saturday for your dining pleasure on 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York.
We wanted to be a part of the resurgence of Syracuse. We saw a lot of money being put into bringing people back downtown and thought that, we'd like to be a part of that. I love putting together a good dish where people see it first, they fall in love with it, and then it tastes just as good as it looks. We want to provide the best food in Syracuse that we possibly can, and we want you to leave here talking to your family, your friends about what you had to eat first and foremost, but also our service, and to walk out feeling like you're part of our family. I work out in the front of the house a lot, and I love walking to every single table, asking them how everything is, and people looking at me and smiling and saying, this is the most amazing short rib I've ever had. This is the most amazing filet I've ever had. And Donna is great. Sarah's amazing. Thank you for coming over and talking to us. And then them just being truly happy for the experience that they've gotten.
317 at Montgomery Restaurant, part of the fabric of downtown Syracuse, located on 317 Montgomery Street in Syracuse, New York. Open Tuesday through Saturday for a unique and memorable dining experience. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, hanging out with you where sports truly meets that thing called life. Appreciate you being here every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and always good to have you in the Cafe Kubal Studios. Of course, Cafe Kubal, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse. Also located on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, in their giant behemoth of a brown-striped building, their double-decker cafe, and on their drive-through location that you can find on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in North Syracuse. So make sure you head out there today. Let them know that Wake Up Call sent you. And if you want to have that great flavor sent straight to your house and you're not in the area, simply go to cafecubal.com. That's cafe, Kubal.com. With that being said, Brendan Murphy here with me on a Murph Monday, talking sports and life, having some fun here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. And we talked about his Jets before the break. Now it's time to talk about my Jaguars, whose season ended this weekend with an overall record this season of 10-9. I said if they went to 7-10 this year, that would be a step in the right direction. That would truly show me that this team is on the rise, and they did 3 better wins than that, made the playoffs, won the division, and took down the Titans not once but twice, which is a very hard feat for them to do from year to year inside of the AFC South. So, with that being said, Brendan now has the opportunity to question me about my Jaguars. Take it away, Murph. What do you got?
All right. So obviously, I'm going to start away. We're going to go away from the playoff game for now.
Okay.
Just to kind of go, give you the chance to talk about the team as a whole. Now, before I think you could probably talk a little bit more about this as well.
Yeah.
When we caught up with each other when I was down in Jacksonville for that Jaguars Giants game.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the Jaguars record at the time was. I think they might have only had 2 wins at the time in October. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah,
But
they lost 5 games
it's
in a row after starting the season 2-1. And they would lose 6 of 7 and then win 6 of 7 to end the regular season.
Yeah.
So
just looking at where they were going into that game, Giants were 5-1, Jaguars were 2-5.
yeah.
I mean, that had to be the turning point of their season, right there. Was that football game? So after that game, they did lose to the Broncos, but then they beat the Raiders, lost to the Chiefs, and then beat the Ravens, beat the Titans, beat the Cowboys, beat the Jets, beat the Texans, beat the Titans. So they had a pretty darn good finish to the season. So what was it about? What do you think it was about that particular game that almost changed the outcome of that season?
Of the Giants game?
Yeah.
So Murph and I got to see each other at the Giants game, which was really cool. Also got to see my good buddy, who's the Giants running back coach, DeAndre Smith, at the game, so I was spoiled that day. Starting off the season 2-0. 2-1 after losing to the Commanders 28-22, shutting out the Colts at home for the first home game of the season, and then defeating the Chargers in LA, which is unheard of. Jacksonville typically does not win any of their games on the West Coast, and not by that margin, 38-10. So then they lost to the Eagles in a close one, 29-21. Lost to the Texans in a game that made no sense, 13-6. At that time, for a long time, the only win the Texans had, and they lost to the Colts the second time around on the road, 34-27. So yeah, I mean there was some heartbreaking. They played well against the Eagles. They played in a game where they had an opportunity to win, and then they just fell off against the Texans. They fell off against the Colts, and it's kind of a head scratcher of like what's going on with this team. Why are they losing these games, especially in division? And then in that Giants game, 23-17, that you say, arguably this could be a turnaround game for them. I think for Jacksonville, I picked the Giants to win the game because as much as I love my Jags, I'm an impartial broadcaster. And I think it's a cardinal sin to pick your team just because. So, I think going back and looking at this game, I mean, Trevor Lawrence did throw a touchdown pass, yet the team lost by 6. So I think when you go back and you look at this and say, okay, Evan Engram caught 4 balls. He got more involved as time went on. Christian Kirk was coming up. Defensively, the defense was good at the start of the season. They were good when they were 2-1, but they were not consistently good. And I think this game, they had 1 sack, which came from Trayvon Walker on Daniel Jones. But to call this a turnaround game, I think, listen, they played them well. They played them close. I don't know if I would necessarily call this their turnaround because I didn't genuinely think that they left it all out there in this game. I think there was more to be had. The Broncos game was a heartbreaker, 21-17, because the Broncos were so bad this year. I think where they really started to turn it was when they stopped the bleeding and they beat the Raiders. And then it was like, okay, you know what? We got to win. We know what it feels like to win again. We got that bad taste out of our mouth. And then to go and play the Chiefs, they were in that game. They lost by 10 on the road, 27-17. But they were in that game in the regular season. They put themselves in good position. I think the real jump off, like the real hitter, not that these losses, they don't learn something from them, but I think the Jaguars really started to show that they were something when they play the Ravens and they beat the Ravens at home. That game, 28-27, that was showing the whole they're never out of a game, because they were playing well in games, but they weren't finishing games. In this game, they finished it. Keep in mind, they went up against Lamar Jackson. He was only 50% that day in passing. Trevor Lawrence did not throw a pick in that game, 3 touchdowns. That, to me, was a game where I was looking at this saying, maybe arguably the Chiefs game because of how good of a team they are and a Super Bowl caliber team. But the way that they played against the Ravens showed them, hey, we can do this. We can win these games. They can count us out. We can come back. Then they went out, after losing to the Lions, they blew out the Titans on the road. They came back against the Cowboys in overtime. They beat the Jets in the game we talked about on the road. They smacked the Texans, and I said, after the first half, if they're leading by a lot, they'll play their backups. They were up 21-0. They played their backups, won 31-3. And then they beat the Titans the second time around with everything on it. So I think the Jaguars really started to show like we might have something here in the Ravens game. But as the guys told me, they said, look at our losses. The Commanders game, they lost by 6. The Eagles game, they lost by 8. The Texans game, they lost by 7. The Colts game, they lost by 7. The Giants game, they lost by 6. The Broncos game, they lost by 4. The Chiefs game, they lost by 10. They said, we were in every game until the end except for Detroit. And the guys said it flat out. They're like, Detroit beat, Arden Key said it to me. He said, Detroit beat our ass. But everybody else, we were in those games. So they knew they had it. They knew it was there. They just had to bring it all together, get consistent with it. They had to grow together, learn together, vibe together. And what do they say? That without adversity, nobody grows. Without adversity, nobody knows what they're capable of. Well, they had their adversity in the middle part of the season in October, and they found a way to respond to it. And that Ravens game, I was like, wow, this is a great game. Then I saw the Cowboys game, and I was like, wow, this is a better game. Then I saw the Titans game, and I was like, wow, this is a better game. Then I saw the Chargers game, and I was like, wow, this game's the best game of the season. So they gave at least 4 of the best games that I've ever seen in Jacksonville. And Cowboys are my second favorite team, so watching the Jaguars and the Cowboys play right after my birthday, that was my Super Bowl. And I said, I want it to be close. I think they'll both score in the 30s, and I want it to come down to the end. It was close. They both scored in the 30s. It came down to the end, and they won, and Jaguars won in overtime. I got everything that I wanted from that game that I never got to see up close until this season. So I think the Ravens game really showed them because that was Lamar Jackson. But, and against that type of talent, and at the time, a lot of people still believing midseason Baltimore is going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. So I think that, and I think the way they played against Kansas City showed them, like, most people probably think we'll lose to Kansas City 35-7. We went in there, we lost by 10. So I think those games kind of showed the difference.
That makes absolute sense. And for me, I asked the question that way, just being at the game, seeing the way they played that game.
Yeah.
That for me was the point where I saw and said, this team could be good. Maybe not this year, maybe not, but possibly next year, maybe the year after. But knowing that team more than anybody that I know, at least, when we were at that Giants Jaguars game, it was as if they were playing a road game.
Yeah.
It was basically a hostile crowd in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So what was the team's reaction to that, and how did they kind of get through that game and find a way to keep it close and missed winning that game by about a yard?
Yeah, I think coming out of that, and I'll answer your question about how the players felt in the fact that I addressed it against the Cowboys. And I was talking to Foye Oluokun, a linebacker for the team, and I said to Foye, I was talking to him about the team and, the fans and all that stuff, and I asked him his thoughts. And he said, it was great to see a full stadium, but in the future, it would be great to see a full stadium of DUUUVAL and not 50-50. So, his whole thing with the Cowboys Jaguars game is that the stadium was full, but half of them were wearing blue. And they publicly spoke about that our fans need to show up. And if we're going to fill a stadium, it needs to be our people. So, what was it like to have a Giants game feel like it was a home game in Jacksonville? To me, I had never experienced anything like that in my 12 years of covering the team on site, on location for the most part. So I can't say that I've ever experienced a moment like that. I felt like I was at a Yankee game, and it was unsettling. It was disrespectful. And I think the fans, and I'm not saying the Giants fans are disrespectful, it was disrespectful that there weren't more Jacksonville fans in the crowd. And as the season went on, I think the fans definitely, heard the call. It showed up for the Titans game, showed up for the Chargers game, 70,000 plus in both of those games. So, and Jacksonville fans. I didn't hear any Charger fans in that playoff game. And the Titans fans.
What Charger fans? They don't have any fans.
Right. 'Cause in LA, it's like, wear whatever you want. You can go there with a.
Their fans are still in San Diego.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, you go to an LA game and they're wearing Chicago Bear jerseys and, Tampa Bay Rays baseball at a football game. But, I think, yeah, they definitely heeded the call for the Chargers game. And the Titans game, there were some Titans fans there, but, the Jaguars fans showed up. So I think my best way to answer that question is that the players noticed moments like that this season. They didn't appreciate it. And they said as great as it was to have a full stadium, they would love to see Jacksonville with a full stadium of DUUUVAL. And I'm happy that DUUUVAL responded and finally gave them that.
For sure. It seems it's based on what you've said and based on what I had heard after that game and after both of those games, really. It seemed like they kind of handled that about as well as you could.
Yeah.
But I just remember being in the crowd. Now, I guess you could say I was part of the problem. I showed up there wearing a Saquon Barkley jersey, but just looking around when I was walking into the game, I'm looking around and seeing like there are Giants fans, Giant jerseys everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, are we sure that we just didn't transport MetLife Stadium to Jacksonville? Mm-hmm. Like that's kind of what it felt like. I mean, you said the Cowboys game was probably 50-50, and that kind of makes sense. Yeah. But that Giants game had to be like 70-30 Giants fans.
Oh, yeah.
Now, keep in mind, there's a lot of New Yorkers that are moving down to Florida.
Yeah.
So that definitely plays a role into it. But I will say my plane to and from Jacksonville from Newark was full of Giants fans. Well, and the pilot happened to be from Jacksonville. So he says to us as we land, let me see if I can find my exact tweet from that day because it was actually pretty funny. But he basically just told us like, "May the best team win" or something funny, like something crazy like that. It was kind of cool. Let me see if I can go back to.
I would have messed with everybody and been like, "We're going to stay on the runway a little bit longer." So that's what I would have. I would have made like we're not going to make it. So.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the tweet that I had put out that day. I said, just landed in Jacksonville from Newark. Heard one of the funniest lines from a flight attendant ever. It was actually the flight attendant. I apologize. Because there's so many Giants fans on the plane. After she finishes her spiel at the end, she goes, and may the best team win tomorrow. And the entire plane just started cracking up laughing. Yeah. It was so funny.
Well, that's the thing.
But
the mass exodus. Obviously New Yorkers, snowbirds, they like to get away from the snow. At the same time of the last few years, people are leaving to land that is still free. So, I always tell people down in Florida, I'm like, hey, if you have plastic bags in your state, you're a free state. So I think New York's the only state that doesn't have plastic bags. And I never thought that I loved them as much as I don't. New Jersey doesn't either, make sense. But, it's one of those things that I tell people all the time, appreciate what you have. Like one lady, she goes, "Do you want me to bag it for you?" And I was prone to say no because I didn't want another paper bag to do nothing with. And I heard the shh of the bag, and I was like, "You got plastic bags?" She was like, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, bag it." And she threw it in the bag. She goes, "You want me to double bag it?" I was like, "Don't talk dirty to me." So like, so yeah. I did tell
Oh my
I did
God.
tell one place, one of the gas stations, when they gave me my bag, I said it's nice to be in a place that's still free, and I walked away. But a lot of people moving to Texas and Florida where plastic bags are aplenty. But yeah, so to answer your question, I talked to the guys in the Dallas game, but yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I listen. Shout out to the Giants fans for showing up in droves, and Jacksonville should have taken that as a personal hit, and they, don't need to let that happen again.
I feel like they did. It seemed like they did because, I mean, the first half of that game was all Giants, but they came out in the second half and played really, really good football.
Yeah.
And made that game closer than it should have been. So, I mean, they played their butts off in that second half of that football game. And at least, like I said, for me, that was the main experience I had of watching a full Jacksonville Jaguars game of this year. And just watching them play, I'm like, this team's being well put together.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing some good stuff. Now, half the time I was getting out of my seat going back underneath the bleachers because it was so damn hot that day.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I have never been that hot at a football game. I've never.
Welcome to Florida.
But also keep in mind, I don't go to football games in the state of Florida. I've been to 2 games in Florida.
Yeah.
I was at the 2019 Orange Bowl when Florida played Virginia, and it wasn't that hot that day because it was at night and it was in December. And I was at the Giants game this year. That was in October when it was 90 degrees. I was dying. It was very, very hot that day, and that was the only reason I went down there. But like you said, I mean, I think it seemed like the guys took it personally, and they came out with a chip on their shoulder, wanting to play tough in that second half. But let's go back to preseason. You had said that you were expecting about 7 wins out of this team. The Jaguars did a lot in free agency.
Yeah,
they drafted well as well. I mean, they drafted a guy number 1 in Trayvon Walker, who at the time I was thinking, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know about that. Like, he's a great player, but I don't know if he's worthy of the number 1 pick. He's proved me wrong so far. But what was your opinion of the way they drafted and the entire offseason? I mean, they spent a lot of money in free agency, especially with a guy like Christian Kirk as well, who basically broke the wide receiver market.
Yeah, I think I'll address the draft first. The 2022 NFL draft for me, looking back on these guys, and I made mention of this recently, is if you look at all their top 4 picks that they had drafted, all played and started, put themselves out there. Trayvon Walker as an edge rusher, number 1 overall in the first round, trading back into the first round, 20th overall, Devin Lloyd, linebacker. And then round 3, number 65 overall, Luke Fortner, and as their offensive lineman. And then also in round 3, number 70 overall, Chad Muma, linebacker. Those guys. Now, Snoop Connor got some work at running back as well, 5th round draft pick. And I believe it was the Texans game when they were up by so much. But, when I look back on the draft and I say to myself, who helped this team get there? Devin Lloyd, Luke Fortner, Chad Muma, Trayvon Walker all made plays this season to get this team to 10 wins. And those are all rookies. And they didn't look like rookies. I love the conversation I had with Chad Muma. Because I said to Chad, I was like, what is it about this team? I said, you made plays. It seems like everybody's made a play. The guys just rotate in. Somebody gets hurt. Somebody makes a play. And he said to me, if you are on the 53-man roster in Jacksonville, you are considered a starter. That's what he said. It was like, if you're on the 53-man, you are a starter. At some point, you're going to have to go out there and make a play. And it was true. And I think that shows such a fantastic culture of a team that this guy think about this. Jacksonville lost their starting left tackle, Cam Robinson. Their blindside offensive lineman. They lost him before the last game of the season. Didn't have him in the playoffs in those 2 games. Didn't have him against the Titans the second time around. Walker Little, the backup, steps in, who was drafted not 2022 but the year before. He steps in, and Jacksonville's had offensive line problems for many years. Many, many years. He stepped in, and it was like nobody even knew Cam Robinson wasn't out there. So I want Walker Little to get a lot of credit on this show. I don't, wherever else, hopefully he gets it, but here on Wake Up Call, thank you, Walker Little, looking right at you. Thank you for what you did, because nobody missed a beat. The offensive line didn't miss a beat. Trevor Lawrence wasn't spending most of the day on his butt because of guys like you. And I think that offensive line stepped up in such an incredible way, especially losing arguably your most important offensive lineman. And then Luke, I called it. I said Luke Fortner is coming in to be the center on this team. I said he's going to be center or guard, and Brandon Sheriff, who plays both, is going to take the other one. And I had this line ready in preseason that Luke Fortner was going to be the center coming out of Kentucky. And here you are. You got a rookie center. After having Brandon Linder for a million years, you have a rookie center, and your team goes to the playoffs. You bring in Brandon Sheriff in free agency from the Washington Commanders, and your team goes to playoffs. Juwan Taylor, still in his rookie contract, has been up and down, and your team goes to the playoffs. You got Walker Little and Cam Robinson, and your team goes to the playoffs. And then when they brought in Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, now I know Zay from East Carolina, and I spent time with Zay in college. And at the time, Zay had set the record of most career receiving yards ever in Division I FBS by any player in the history of college football. Zay is a guy I believed in. When Buffalo drafted him, I believed in him. When it didn't work out and he went to Vegas, I believed in him. When he came to Jacksonville, I was like, man, I feel like this guy has something, and it hasn't been working out. But it can't be that I saw this really good receiver that's just not going to make it. And he is such a faithful person, such a God-centric person, such an incredible person. Remembered my name, awesome with me. We've had a ton of great interactions this season. Zay Jones was worth it. You know, when you look at the contract, I was like, okay, they're giving him a lot of money for a guy who has had, you know, two places where it didn't really work out. But I believed in Zay Jones. And Christian Kirk is an interesting story because I believed he was going to be the guy that got the torch from Larry Fitzgerald in Arizona. I thought Larry was going to retire, hand it to Christian. Christian was going to be the number one guy. That never worked out. So when Christian came to Jacksonville, yeah, it was a lot of money. And a lot of people wrote to me and said, well, it's a lot of money, Dan. It's too much money. But Christian Kirk, Zay Jones paid off. Darius Williams at corner that they got, he paid off. Evan Ingram, my Lord, giant faithful person as well. Evan Ingram, tremendous. He was one of the, in my opinion, he was one of the top 5 tight ends in the country a few years ago. And he dipped with the Giants, and he came to Jacksonville, and I still don't think they used him enough. I think they could use him more. Fatu Kasi, defensive tackle, coming in and doing his thing. And then Foye, who I mentioned before, Oluwakin. I mean, you look at Jacksonville and the poor decisions that they've made in the past. And then you look at the 2022 draft and 2022 free agency and different guys that they brought in. The Jacksonville Jaguars, and I also want to make mention during the season, JaMychal Hasty, bringing him in from San Fran at running back. So when they made the playoffs the last time, 2017, 2018, I did a story about their draft. And in 6 years, they had 40 some odd picks, like 43 picks. None of them were on the team. None. In 6 years. And what that told me was they drafted wrong. Because here you are, 6 years of draft capital, and none of those guys helped you to the playoffs. Fast forward to the next time they make the playoffs 4 years later. Their free agents worked out. Their draft picks worked out. And the free agents became starters. The guys they paid a lot of money to became starters. The rookies became starters. Jacksonville showed me something this season that I haven't seen in a while, which is using their draft capital to pay off dividends down the road and spending money to let the guys, I mean, they let D.D. Westbrook go, they let DJ Shark go, they let Laviska Shenault go, all their young receivers that they drafted, they let all those guys go to bring in guys that were veterans. It worked out with Christian, it worked out with Zay. Evan Ingram, it worked out with him, and he opened up other tight ends like Luke Farrell, who they had drafted before. I look at their draft this year, and I look at their moves that they made in the offseason. And as opposed to the last time they made the playoffs where the draft picks didn't work out, this time around the draft picks were a big part of it. and the money was a big part of it. And I want to shout out Jacksonville for making some really smart moves, because would I have necessarily given Christian Kirk that amount of money? Probably not. But I wasn't mad that they went and got Christian and Zay, and I think that they went above and beyond what anybody expected of them. And they are two of the nicest, kindest, most humble guys, faithful guys. And I'm going to shout out Zay. He's a really good dancer too, because they were dancing in the locker room after the Titans win. But no, there's something to be said about the fact that the Jaguars front office, I think, finally got some things right.
Absolutely. I mean, just going back and watching what they were able to do this year, I mean, you can kind of tell that this team had like a chip on their shoulder. I mean, you said, like you had said, that Ravens game was probably their their turning point of the season. And then going out and winning 6 out of 7 to close out the regular season, beating the Titans twice in the process to win the division.
Yeah.
Now, I think one thing that you could probably mention too, especially the last 3 or so games of the season with the Titans, I don't want to say they gave up, but they kind of gave up in that division and almost handed the Jaguars that division on a silver platter and basically said, "Hey, it's yours if you can beat us." And and sure enough, they did. But there was one thing that the Jaguars did that we actually talked a little bit about at one point, because our two teams made a little trade in the middle of the season, and I remember you kind of questioning a little bit about why, and that it didn't really make sense. So just to kind of bring it back, what did you make about that James Robinson trade? And now that we know it's going to be a 6th and not a 5th round pick, since he didn't reach his carry numbers with the Jets, what do you think about that trade in hindsight now?
Well, I will say, I don't think the Titans gave them anything, because the Titans, they don't like each other. So I will say that, and I'll take nothing away from Jacksonville. The trade-wise for James Robinson, I was totally against it, because this is a 1,000-yard back. He was a rookie last year, got to 1,000 yards. He could have actually beaten Fred Taylor's record if they had let him play the last couple games. And he was an undrafted free agent out of Illinois State. Shout out to them. And, tremendous player, great guy. I had just interviewed him. It was the weirdest thing in the world to look at him in the locker room and see him standing right next to Travis Etienne. And then literally within 2 days, he was gone. And I was in the locker room looking at him on that Sunday. So weird to me to see something like that. I mean, I definitely see how much of a business it is, how quickly names get taken off of locker room doors. And when he left, my issue with that was that I thought it was a great 1-2 punch, and they put all their cards in Travis Etienne, who I think is obviously he's a weapon, right? But he got hurt last year, and my thing was, if he gets hurt again, what's your fail-safe? What's your plan? And they brought in JaMychal Hasty, and Hasty did a great job. He was really good against the Chiefs. And I got nothing against JaMychal Hasty at all. I just didn't like the move, and I thought there was better value for James Robinson. You're trading a 1,000-yard back. And my issue with that was the Jaguars were helping the Jets, but the Jets weren't helping the Jaguars. So that, to me, was an issue. The Jaguars were saying, "Oh, okay, Breece Hall went down. You need our help. Here you go." And what they got in return was not good enough, in my opinion. Now, hindsight 2020, can they win without him? Yes. Do I understand why he came to the Jets and was the 4th string running back and barely got any time? And I kind of have a feeling in the offseason he's going to get cut by the Jets and end up somewhere else. So at the end of the day, it's what was this move for anybody involved? But I mean, the Jaguars get a pick. That's good late in the draft if they're smart, which they have been recently. But, for me, I just think about James Robinson. I think about the fact that I think he's going to be looking for a team at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So do I like him? Yeah. What do I think about hindsight 2020? I think that they still could have been good with him. I still think he brings an element that's positive, and I like the 1-2 punch. I still think Jacksonville needs more help in the backfield with JaMychal and Travis Etienne. So I'd like to bring in somebody else or Snoop Connor to rise up. I know he's a rookie this year and didn't have a lot of time out there. But, yeah, I mean, the way I felt going into it was they weren't getting enough. The way I feel coming out of it is bad for James Robinson.
No, absolutely. I don't disagree with you. And I mean, I can speak from the Jets' perspective here. I mean, just that when they made that trade and they bring him in, it was right after Breece Hall went down with the ACL injury against Denver. And it was quite literally 2 days after we saw each other and talked about that Jaguars-Giants game, James Robinson was a Jet.
Yeah.
Right. So just seeing him come into the Jets locker room, you're like, all right, it made a lot of sense to make that move. I mean, I think they could have gone somewhere in a different direction, but it was good. It was a good fit. Now he plays a little bit. Michael Carter is a little bit. He eventually falls out of favor with that team. And when Michael Carter got hurt in Mike White's first game, it wasn't James Robinson that was playing. It was Bam Knight. It was Zonovan Knight. And Bam Knight, for his credit, undrafted free agent, played pretty well down the stretch. He seemed like a guy that could be something. He'll be the Jets' third string running back next year.
Yeah.
But I think I think he made a good point. I think James Robinson is going to be looking for a new team next year. I mean, the Jets still own his rights. I mean, they can bring him back if they want, but it might be something that may not be worth doing, because if they decided not to dress him at the end of this year, then why would you bring him back? Which makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
So Trevor Lawrence,
yes,
the guy that Adam Gase handed you on a silver platter.
Yeah.
Quite literally. I will still never get over that, because that year I had said the only guy I wanted over Sam Darnold in that draft was Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And I have been proven right again.
Yeah.
I've been proven right that Zach Wilson stinks. I've been proven right that Trevor Lawrence is a dude. Now, last year, obviously, he had his struggles. And even this year, he had his struggles as well. But you could see near the end of the year, he really started to find himself, and he came into his own. So what did you see from Trevor this year, and what kind of things are you expecting from him in the not so distant future? Well,
I mean, I called it. I said he was going to have a good sophomore year. I said he was going to have an uptick year. He was going to progress. I wasn't worried about that. I reminded people of Peyton Manning coming into the league, throwing a ton of interceptions, and I think having one win as a rookie for the Colts. And, that people need to understand it doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it does, and usually that's not sustained. But in the case of Trevor Lawrence, I mean, listen, he's 6'6". You can't teach that. He has won everywhere he's been, in high school and college. The games that Clemson's had to play, they're playing NFL guys, right? When you're playing Alabama and LSU and this and that, win or lose, you're playing NFL guys. And so I think he's had the advantage of getting to play in games like that. I think that, to me, I wasn't worried. I wasn't worried that his numbers weren't high last year. I wasn't worried that, he's a rookie. He's a rookie on a team with a coach that looked like he was playing some virtual reality game in his mind somewhere very far away. So, I mean, did I interview Urban Meyer? Yes. Did I want to interview Urban Meyer and have that, as something I wanted to do? Absolutely. Do I think that Urban Meyer was completely checked in? No. And my words when Urban Meyer was hired and people said, "What do you think?" My response was, "I don't know, because I'm going to have to see. We have different morals and values, it seems, so I don't know what I'm going to think." When he got fired, my response was, "We have different morals and values for sure, and I'm not a fan." So, I don't have that special someone, but if I did find that special someone, I would not be letting my team go back on a plane as their leader so I can grind with someone that could be my daughter. So my best Urban Meyer in his future decision-making. But, yeah, I mean, they changed the coach. They brought in Doug Peterson. They brought Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones Jr. said it to me. He said flat out, listen, everybody in this locker room knew we needed a coaching change. after last year. He said, we all knew we needed a coaching change, and we got that. They all sing the praises of Doug Peterson. One of the players told me, they're like, when your coach brings his own chaplain to like service, to church service, like brings his own person, like that's something unique and rare. Doug is a different guy. My thoughts when Doug came in, I watched the first video with him and I went, I think I'm going to like this guy. I think I like his personality. Feeling a year in, I like this guy. I like his personality. I like what he's doing. You know, he seems like the dad that you want to be close to. Where Urban Meyer seems like the dad that's going to pay alimony and see you every other Saturday. So, you know, I think that Doug Peterson coming in was a help for Trevor. I wasn't worried about Trevor. He set a record this year, the amount of yardage he had with Jacksonville. I mean, anybody that thought Trevor Lawrence was not going to be a good NFL quarterback, to me, was not thinking logically and rationally. You know, he's on the worst team in the country. This isn't like getting recruited to go to Clemson when Clemson's good. You know, you're getting recruited to come to the 32nd team of 32. And I think he's done a heck of a job. I think, you know, I've gone on record of saying if you commit 3 to 5 turnovers a game, you don't win 99% of the time. He had 3 interceptions in the first quarter, first 15 minutes of play against the Chargers, 4 in the first half, 5 turnovers as a team, and they won. So his ability to have his strong mind, his strong will, his capacity of believing in himself and in each other, the culture of the team, the locker room, the family, the faith, the God of it. Like, if you're in that locker room and you're talking to these guys, you would root for them even if you weren't a Jaguars fan. So, am I surprised that Trevor's better? No. Did I say he would be? Yes. Do I think Doug Peterson makes this a better culture? Absolutely. And I hope Trevor stays a Jaguar forever because he can etch himself in the history of Jacksonville and in the NFL, in my opinion. He could go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. If things, I don't want to put an if on it. I really honestly believe he could be one of the best quarterbacks. I do. And I completely agree with you. One of the coolest plays I saw by him was in the Chargers game, where they decided to go for it when I said they should go for it. Now, granted, it helped out that Joey Bosa was an idiot, but because and I shouldn't say an idiot, you need to keep your composure. And that happened in a Syracuse game when they played Purdue. Purdue had about 4 penalties before Syracuse could kick their extra point because they were pissed off that they gave up the lead. And, you know, and Joey Bosa, I said they should go for 2 on that before that even happened. And then Joey Bosa did what he did. They're on the 1-yard line. I'm like, oh, yeah, you got to go for it. One of the coolest plays I've ever seen in my life showed the Trevor Lawrence 6-6. They called hike. The goal line's here. He went like this. He literally stuck the ball out like it was a prop, like it was a puppet, like saying hello. He stuck the ball out and pulled it right back. It was like, 2-point, thank you. Nobody touched the ball. And it was one of the, and seeing it from the press box, that's all you saw. You saw his arm come out and pull back in with the ball. And I was like, well, you know, can't teach that. That's some Trevor. But yeah, I mean, I think he's on the uptick. I thought he would have a better year this year. And I think Jacksonville's ahead of schedule. So I'm happy.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I mean, just you and I, we were texting with each other back and forth, at least in the first half of that game.
Yeah.
And then I, like a lot of fans at 27-0, figured, all right, this game's probably over. I had to be, they were the Saturday game, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Saturday last week.
Yeah.
So Saturday. So I had to be at work early the next day. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go to bed. Go to bed, wake up the next morning, get up for work, check my phone. I see a text from you after they won, and I see the score. And I'm like, what in the heck happened in that second half to the Chargers? Because they just fell apart. But that was a great game for them as well. But you mentioned the coaching change with Doug Peterson.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for me, that's the two best hires of the offseason were Doug Peterson and Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll will probably win Coach of the Year, but if he doesn't, it's going to be Doug Peterson. It's going to be one or the other. I mean, because Doug Peterson came in and took a Jaguars team that was picking first in the draft the last 2 years, off of a season where they had arguably one of the greatest college coaches ever come to the NFL and basically destroy their franchise, and nearly destroyed their once in a generation type quarterback, the best quarterback to come out of college football since Peyton Manning. That you could tell there was a big turnaround there, and Doug Peterson was a huge part of that. And I'm still somewhat questioning how he's not still in Philly. I don't know why they got rid of him so quickly after winning that Super Bowl. It made no sense to me.
Yeah.
But
well, it's like Ron Rivera being coach of the year in Carolina and being let go right after.
Yeah. I know it made no sense, but let's talk. You started mentioning the playoff game. So let's talk about them. About both. We'll start with the Chargers game for sure.
Yeah.
4 picks in the first half for Trevor Lawrence, down 27-0 at halftime. You were there. You talked to those guys. What changed? What changed after I went to bed that night?
Well, listen. So toward the end of the first half, so they're down 27-0, and they had an opportunity to score before the first half ended, and they did, and made it 27-7. And I talked to the guys about that after the game. I said, was that score, like, did you feel like that, like, let's get on the board? Yeah, we're still down by 20, but we're on the board. Like, did you feel like you needed that, like, for your momentum? And they said that definitely was a big part of it. They said nothing changed in the locker room. They came into the locker room. They said, we know who we are. We know what we have to do. We know how to get it done. We need to do it. He said there was nothing crazy said by Doug Peterson. There's nothing crazy said by anybody. It was like, we know who we are. We're going to play Jaguars football. We know what we need to do, and we're going to go and do it. And Doug had said that the defense was playing well, but he said the offense, he said, basically he said to them, we're going to have to score on like every possession. We're going to have to get the ball and just score on every possession. And the offense took that, and they scored out of the gate, and they just kept hitting it. When they were down 27-14, I was in the press box, and I looked at some of the guys. I said, it's a game now. And one of the guys goes, you think so? I said, yeah. He's like, really? I said, it's a game. It's 13 points. It's a game. And the other guy was like, nah, it's not a game yet. I was like, trust, it's a game. This is a game now. And I think that might have been the Zay Jones touchdown. And we're wide open on the left side of the end zone. I said, it's a game. And then when it was 30-20, yeah. When it was 30-20, I said, they need to score here and go for 2. And one of the guys looked at me and he goes, you would go for 2 right now? I said, yeah. And I said, yeah, you go for 2 right now. Then you kick the game-winning field goal to win by a point at the end of the game. You don't wait to go for 2. You go for 2 right now. And the guy that was sitting between us goes, nah, you don't do that. That's ridiculous. There's 8 minutes left. It's too much time. You don't do that. He's not going to do that. And then some people changed their tune when Bosa did what he did and they were on the 1-yard line. And they went for 2 and they got it 30-28. And then I said, okay, now you just got to hold them. The defense has been good. You just got to hold them, kick the game-winning field goal. And they ran a play on 4th and 1 that was insane. And I want to credit the coaching staff for this. Everybody on the Chargers came to the center thinking this is a quarterback sneak or a handoff up the middle. Mm-hmm. And Trevor hiked the ball, and Etienne was on his left side, hands him the ball, and Etienne rolls around right, comes behind, 25-yard gain to their 16. I think it was to their 16. And I was like, okay, like now all they got to do is just put themselves in position to kick this field goal. And Riley Patterson is somebody I've known. I covered him at Memphis. Awesome guy. And Riley comes out. And I'm seeing the game sideways from the press box. So we rely on the fans because you can't always see. So you rely on the fans to like cheer or not cheer. When that ball went through and the fans erupted, I looked down on the field to see what Riley was doing. Riley had taken his cross off Very, very faithful guy. Talks about, if you listen to my interview with Riley Patterson after that game-winning field goal, he talks about God for like 8 minutes. He takes his cross off and he just does this. And to all the cameras that were trying to get visual of him after the game when he kicked it, he just held his cross up. And he told me this after, he's like, if he had done it, if God put him in the position and he had done it and kicked the game-winning field goal, that he was going to do that he was going to, put his cross out there. And he did. He was a man of his word. But listen, that game was incredible. I looked down at the table and I said, it's not over till it's over, which is very reminiscent of what I said in Chicago when Syracuse was playing Virginia and they were down by 15. And I said, the fat lady hasn't sung yet. It's not over till it's over. And I never stopped believing in them in that game. They never stopped believing in themselves. The victory was incredible. The conversations were incredible. The love for Doug Peterson was tangible. And yeah, I mean, it was to beat an LA team not once but twice when they typically don't do it ever. And to do what they did, the way they did it, the comeback they had, it was a thing for the ages. It was the third largest comeback in NFL history in the playoffs, 27 points. And they ended the game on a 31-3 run. So, I mean, what can I say about the Jacksonville Jaguars? This is not the locker room that I've been in the last couple of years. And that's a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the fourth down play with Travis Etienne. Waking up the next day, having seen the highlight of that play,
yeah,
I would rank that up there with the Philly special as one of the best play calls in recent memory in a playoff game. That's one of those things where it's fourth and I believe it was less than a yard. It was like fourth and a foot. And everyone's thinking, all right, they're either going to hand it to Etienne up the middle or they're going to sneak it with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Sure enough, little end around, and sure enough, 25-yard gain. Jags set themselves up in perfect position for that field goal. And then they win the game. Now, obviously, last week on Saturday, Trevor Lawrence lost his first game on a Saturday in his life, which I think is kind of a crazy stat to be honest about it. But they were in that game very much so until the very end. I mean, it was 20-17 in the fourth quarter at one point.
Yeah.
I very much thought that they had a good chance of winning this football game, and I was rooting hard for him because, especially when Patrick Mahomes got hurt when he rolled his ankle.
Yeah.
Now, luckily for the Chiefs' sake, it's nothing too crazy serious. It's just a high ankle sprain. But when Chad Henne came into that game, he let him on a touchdown drive in the second quarter. But I'm on the Jaguars. I'm saying Trevor Lawrence, but Patty Mahomes comes back in the game, and he wasn't the same. You could clearly tell he was hobbled. He wasn't feeling great. And it really did give the Jags a chance to win that football game. But at least just watching it from afar, just looking at the way they were, preventing trying to prevent the run, and it just wasn't working. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco basically ran all over them in the latter part of this football game.
Yeah.
And Travis Kelce, 14, they had a tough time stopping him as well.
Yeah.
So what were your initial thoughts about that game? I know we were talking a little bit, after that football game, you were on a plane coming back from Mexico, so you missed the very last part of that game.
Yeah.
But what were your initial thoughts after seeing that game and just thinking about the season as a whole?
Yeah, looking back at that game, listen, they made it a game. Now, Foye Oluokun had his hands in the first half on an interception. He didn't come up with it. The Chiefs scored on that drive. They fumbled the ball and were able to chase it down, the Chiefs were. So I look at two of those takeaways, right? You play up against a guy like Pat Mahomes, you got to have a couple takeaways, and you got to score off of them. You got to give them, if you're going to have 6 possessions a game, you need to give them 4. And what the Chiefs did in the first possession that they had is they took that possession so long that it was like, okay, you got to score. If you're Jacksonville, you got to score right after. It was 7-0, and they did. and they scored a lot quicker. I think it was like 4 minutes. But, tying that game, it was like, all right, you got to make a stop. And that interception would have been a stop where you could get ahead because you don't want to chase Kansas City to the bitter end of the game. You don't want it to be 7-0, 7-7, 14-7, then you tie it. You don't want to be the one chasing. You got to get on the other end of it. And a couple of those mistakes by Kansas City could have worked out in favor of Jacksonville. Now, I was a little surprised at how they were playing Travis Kelce. I know he's the best tight end in the NFL, but I was a little surprised in how easily he caught the ball, how wide open he was. I was also surprised in their failure to stop the run game. Kansas City was moving pretty comfortably, so even when Jacksonville made it a game, Kansas City was, never looked rattled. Chad Henne is a former Jacksonville quarterback, and I interviewed him when he was in Jacksonville, actually when they went and visited Buffalo, and he was training Blake Bortles. And shout out to Henne for still being in the NFL. Chad Henne came in, did a hell of a job, got a touchdown to Kelce. But, yeah, I was a little surprised in their defense. And, right before I took off, this is really tough to see. Right before I took off, 1st and goal at the Kansas City 9-yard line, down by 10. The Jaguars had an opportunity to score. Jamal Agnew ran the ball for 3 yards and fumbled, and it was recovered by Kansas City. So, to me, that was really difficult. It was the last thing I saw. I was like, okay, this would have made it 27, it was 27-17. This would have made it 27-24, arguably. And, would have definitely been a game. So, to me, that was something that was really difficult to see, that situation. And then, right after that happens and you fumble it, they turn it over again, where we see on the next possession for Jacksonville in the fourth quarter, Trevor Lawrence threw an interception, and they obviously lost that possession as well, and then they scored on the last one. So I think you look in the first half and you say the fumble recovery they didn't get and the interception they didn't come up with, and then to mirror that, the fumble they had and the interception they had. So they didn't take away those 2 possessions, but they gave away 2 possessions. And I think if they were able to take them away and not give them away, that fumble, if the fumbles were reversed and the interceptions were reversed, I think Jacksonville could have at least tied the game in regulation and gone overtime and seen what, overtime looks like now in professional football, where if you score a touchdown, the team has the opportunity to still equal that. And it's not that a touchdown ends all. So, I think it was a couple mistakes by Jacksonville on offense and a couple missed opportunities on defense that really called this game, because as much as Travis Kelce was getting the ball and doing what he wanted to do, and as much as they struggled to take down Pat Mahomes, they played well, and they played him closer than the first time around. They lost 27-17 in the regular season on the road, as I mentioned before. They lost by 7 this time. So up against a Super Bowl caliber team that has won a championship, to play them the way that you played them and to know the mistakes that you made, if they minimized those mistakes and created opportunities on the other side of it, I think Jacksonville would have made this a really, really close game. And I had them 31-27, and that was still alive coming down the stretch. So, am I disappointed? No. They had a hell of a year. Am I emotional? Yeah. Do I believe in the guys? Of course I do. And am I really pissed off that there's not another week to watch this team? I am. Because I think NFL fans and people all over the world got something from Jacksonville you don't usually get, which is a story of a team that was in last place in the NFL not once but 2 years in a row, back-to-back number 1 picks, and goes to the playoffs, wins their division, beats their rival, wins a playoff game, and is one of the final 8 teams in the country after being the last team in the nation 2 years in a row. Comeback team of the year is Jacksonville, and there's not even a question about it.
Absolutely. If there was an award for comeback team of the year or most surprising team of the year, they would be it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like looking at last year with the Bengals, and seeing what they did, going from 2 years removed from having the number 1 pick, and then going to the Super Bowl and playing the Rams pretty tough until the very end. Now, the last thing I want to ask you real quick is going to be about what the what the Jags can do in the draft this year.
Okay.
Now I'm trying to find out where they're picking right now. It's going to be in the mid to high 20s.
Yeah, it's
I'm
25.
trying to see
I
where
believe.
20, 25. Okay.
Right around
So
25.
they're going to be picking 25th.
Yeah.
Now, just looking at actually this list says 24, but I could be wrong about that. This list could be wrong.
One of them says 24, a bunch of other ones say 25, but it's somewhere in that mid 20s.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the main thing I'll ask you lastly here is basically just about where they can go. What do you think they do with that first round pick, and then what do you think they do in free agency to better this team? Because they definitely have a window
Yeah.
right now to win a lot of football games.
Yeah. The first round pick should be, looking at Cam Robinson's health long term because he's been injured a lot, and then looking at where they are with Juwan Taylor, I think that's something that they have to pay attention to for sure. So I think you have to address your offensive line, probably an offensive tackle, and then I would say outside of the first round of doing that, I mean I like the receivers. Remember they did make a move on Calvin Ridley, so we're supposed to be getting him, and we'll see what that looks like. But
I forgot about that.
yeah, so
I genuinely forgot about that.
so I think maybe the third round you take a running back, first round you take an offensive lineman, maybe a tackle, second round you take a defensive lineman, arguably. I think they got to go for the trenches, whoever's the best available when they pick in the first round, because they need some help up front. Not that they don't have some dogs, but they need a few more. And yeah, so I mean, I would address the trenches. That's how you win championships. Shout out George O'Leary. So I would say that. I would say you get a running back at some point here, depending on what the talent looks like. And then I would say what you don't get in the draft, I think they should bring in a wide receiver or two in free agency. I do think that. I think that could be good for them to bring in some of those guys. I think bringing in a running back and, in free agency as well, that could be another move for them to make. Looking at probably wouldn't want that headache. Josh Jacobs, that's a guy. I don't know if you'd want to bring him in because of ETN. You want to bring in a guy who kind of is okay playing a role. So, I think Dante Foreman, who had a good season with Carolina, that could be a good move. I think, a guy like in the moves that I think could actually happen, because some of these I don't. I mean, look at what Jerick McKinnon's done for Kansas City if they don't re-sign him. So, he kind of gives you a similar thing in different ways to Travis Etienne. So I think, I think you can make a move for that. I think you can make a move for some of these guys. I mean, I'm looking at a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield. And Giovanni Bernard's still there, but, he's been around the block for a minute. So I'd probably, if I'm Jacksonville, I would look at Jerick McKinnon. I would maybe look at Dearness Johnson, who's filled in pretty well for Cleveland at times. I look at Dante Foreman. I don't think Josh Jacobs is going to happen because I think he wants to be the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And Jamal Williams, I mean, listen, the only team, like they said, the only team that beat the hell out of him was Detroit. So make a play for Jamal Williams. He's a hell of a player to be a backup. So, I like him there too. So I think, and Jeff Wilson Jr. has bounced around a little bit. And, so you can make a move on that. And so I think there's definitely some openings for that to be done, running back wise in free agency, where you can get some guys that have some talent. But I think you spend your picks on offensive and defensive line. You might want to address, bolstering up your secondary a little bit more. Wide receiver wise, Marvin Jones is a free agent, so we'll see what they do with that. But I mean, here's a guy they could make a move on. I'd be surprised if Green Bay doesn't retain him if they keep Aaron Rodgers. But Alan Lazard, before he went to Green Bay, was on the practice squad at Jacksonville. So, seeing what Alan Lazard is made of and bringing him in, that could be something to help them out. There's some other there's a bunch of former Jaguars that are going to be out there in free agency that they could kind of say, okay, we get them cheap, bring them back, see what they got. But I mean, looking at the list right now, I would say if I'm Jacksonville, Jacoby Myers, good possession receiver. Alan Lazard didn't know what they had, so they could go back and get that again. And then, I think a guy like Sterling Shepard, right? Call up Evan Engram and say, hey, how's your relationship with Sterling? Can you give him a call and bring him into this? Because they don't need a number one guy, but if they have at least three guys that can be dominant, then, that's a good. I think tight end, they're in a good place. I think, you obviously keep Evan Engram. And then, yeah, I mean, I think you can address a lot of those skill positions in free agency. I think what it comes down to in the draft is offensive and defensive line, and then addressing some of the secondary. Not that they don't have good backups, but I would just, maybe do a few more things. But offensive and defensive line definitely have to be addressed, because as much as they attack the quarterback and protect the quarterback, they could get a little bit better. So,
for sure. And when you there were two names that I was going to mention that made a lot of sense for them at running back. And you hit on them. It was Dearness Johnson and Jeff Wilson were the two guys that I thought of.
yeah.
Because they're not going to be guys that are necessarily looking to be starters somewhere,
Right.
but they're guys that are very good players that can catch the ball out of the backfield, that are going to be a good, nice complement to Travis Etienne.
Right.
I mean, I don't know so much about Jamal Williams. I think Detroit's going to want to try and retain him. With how good their running back duo was with him and DeAndre Swift, but those guys do make a lot of sense. And there's one guy at receiver that used to be a huge name that I don't think obviously isn't anymore, that might make some sense and might be a guy that you can say, you know what, he's a guy who has been really good in the past that maybe isn't so much anymore, is in the twilight of his career. Maybe you can see if he can go get him a championship, and that's Julio Jones. I mean, I think he's still got something left in the tank. I mean, he's not a number one receiver anymore by any means, but he would absolutely fill that role that you're looking for. I mean, he's a guy that, has been very good for many, many years, and you could very easily bring him in. Probably wouldn't have to pay him a ton of money either, and you can tell him, hey, let's try and go get you a ring.
Yeah.
I mean, you lost the one in Atlanta. Why not come here and try and see if we can get you a ring with Trevor? I think that would make a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's some moves to be made, and there's a bunch of different avenues that they can take, which I like. I like that free agency is. I like the position that they're in, because they're not looking for free agency to save them. They're looking to fill in some cracks, give them some depth.
Mm-hmm.
This is a position Jacksonville hasn't been in a very long time, to say, let's fill in a couple pieces here. Let's get an extra one here. Let's do a little bit of this over here. I mean, they got one of the best punters in the NFL. They got Riley Patterson as their kicker. They got a great special teams return guy in Jamal Agnew, arguably the best in the country. So, to me, they thankfully are going into this offseason saying, where can we improve just a little bit more? So I'm excited for that. I'm definitely looking forward to that and what they can do, and saving money while they do it, which I think is great. And, Greg said the Bengals are debunking the fact that you need a good offensive line, and I think that's very true. But, Joe Burrow, listen, I thought, and we'll talk about it after the break. Our final piece is going to be NFL playoff talk. We kind of talked about college football within all this, talk about the draft. But Brendan and I are going to be back here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal studios. He answered my questions on his Jets. I answered his on my Jags. And we're going to take a step aside. I want to let everybody know really quick here before we get into the NFL playoffs. Brendan and I are wearing red today for a reason. So I had an outfit picked out for today, and finding out that there was a reason to wear red today, we have changed it up here in the Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, Cafe Kubal Studios, and that is because, and I don't know if y'all can see it on here, hopefully you can, but you can see that this is a tribute to, it says on Monday, wear red for Ava and Brexa Lee. And for those of you that don't know, both of these young ladies were taken from us way too soon. Brexa Lee Torres Ortiz was killed by a stray bullet on the south side when she was bringing milk home for her family. And Ava Wood was lost her life in a murder-suicide from her father. So both of these young girls, I think Ava was 14 and Brexalee was 11. So I just ask for your prayers, and we're wearing red today to show our support for the community, for Brexalee and Ava's families, their loved ones, and obviously for their souls a safe path to heaven. So and I know people have different religions, some people don't have any, but Brendan, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say a prayer on the show, and I feel like we need to, so I'm going to do that. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God, I want to ask you today, well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for waking us up this morning. For those of us that have the blessing to be here, may we realize that it is a blessing and not a right, it is a privilege. I pray for Brexalee and Ava, that they are up in heaven. I know they're up in heaven with you. I pray that they are safe and sound, laughing, giggling, and having a great time. I pray that you dry away the tears of their families and their loved ones, and that you help this community to heal. Senseless violence, well, I think all violence is pretty senseless, but violence of any kind only begets more violence. May we learn from this, that whatever beef, whatever fight, whatever was going on that night, that Brexalee happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, I hope the person that fired that gun will change their life for the better. And I hope the people they were firing it toward will change their life for the better. Because of them and their stupid feuds and whatever issues they may have, they cost the world a life. Because they were selfish, rude, hateful, and negative. They took an 11-year-old from her family and from our community. In Ava's case, I can't say that I know her dad and know what was going on in his head. I can say from the outside looking in that mental illness is a real thing, and mental health is imperative. I don't know what it took for him to get to where he was, but I pray and I hope that that does not happen to anybody else. I pray for the healing of our minds, our hearts, our bodies, and our souls. That whatever is ailing us today will not ail us for the rest of today or ever again. That you will help us to heal completely and for good, and no matter what, through you, and handle well whatever comes our way. Lord, I pray for every one of the families, every one of the loved ones, and I pray for our community, and I pray for everyone everywhere that woke up this morning with one of their loved ones in heaven. May they be safe and sound there. May we be safe and sound here. And may we always be connected with our loved ones, even in death, because dying you destroyed our death, and rising you restored our life. May nothing keep this community down, these families down, or any of us down. We are stronger together, and we will prevail. Because, as you said in one of the prayers we pray, glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, a world without end. May our worlds not end because of what happened these last few days. May we find a way to carry on, strive forward, love each other, be better, and remember that we're trying to get back to heaven, not just trying to get somewhere here on earth. I love you with all that I am. For Ava, for Brexalee, and for everybody, I pray. In Jesus' most precious name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Brendan, do you want to say any words before we head into our break?
Yeah, I mean, the what's going on in the world these days is just tragic. I mean, obviously we pray for those two young girls, their souls getting into heaven. Prayers to the family of both of them. We've had more, like you said, senseless violence this year than that I can really remember, with all the mass shootings and all these, and it's for what, what's even the reason for it, right? And it doesn't make sense. And that's, God gave us free will, but at the same time, He had no intention of us doing something like that.
Yeah.
So I pray for their families, for their loved ones, and like you said, hopefully nothing like this ever happens again. I mean, You know it probably will, but you hope it doesn't. And you just hope that anybody that, like you said, I mean, anybody with that kind of mental illness that thinks they need to do something like that, they get help. That's a really important thing. I mean, there's countless resources that people can use. People are more than willing to hear them out. You know, that's what like psychologists and those guys are for. You know, that's their job is to help people with mental illness. You know, so prayers to the families, for their souls. You know, can't imagine anything like this happening to someone I'm close to. So I'm grateful it wasn't any of my family, but at the same time, you hope that this never, you feel for the families, you pray for their families, and hope something like this never happens again.
Yeah. The world saw how beautiful it is to come together and pray for somebody when they did it for DeMar Hamlin. I hope that you do that for Peyton Hillis. I hope you do it for Ava Wood and for Brexley Torres Ortiz and for everybody that needs it today. And if you need one, we're praying for you too. We'll take a step aside for a fast break. We're giving you extra time, bonus time today on a Murph Monday. Brendan Murphy and myself, Dan Tortora, back on Wake Up Call inside of the Cafe Kubal studios right after this to talk about your NFL playoffs, the teams that are moving on, and what I consider to be genuinely, probably, arguably, the worst last play of a football game. I'm looking at you, Dallas. We'll talk about it right after this on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora.
Carvel DeWitt, it's what happy tastes like. Do you know why? Because we make ice cream. Creamy, rich, flavorful ice cream. Not yogurt or iced milk like some of our competitors. Ice cream. Fresh, by hand, daily. For the calorie conscious, we have something new for you. Our new Carvelite. Same great flavor, creaminess, and texture of our regular ice cream with only 35 calories an ounce. So whether you want an ice cream cake, flying saucer, dasher, carvalanche, hard or soft ice cream, we will satisfy your craving with our fresh, handmade regular or new Carvelite ice cream. Carvel DeWitt. It's what happy tastes like.
Cafe Kubal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafekubal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Kubal needs. Cafe Kubal, coffee for the soul.
The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is located on 3680 Milton Avenue in the Home Depot Plaza. It is your family-friendly sports bar and restaurant. Folks, some sports bars aren't family-friendly. Some family-friendly restaurants are not sports bars. The Wildcat Sports Pub in Camillus, New York is proud to be both. It is that marriage that you've been looking for years. The Wildcat Sports Pub is your home base for your sports bar and restaurant needs, games for the kids, indoor and outdoor activities, and enough things on the menu to come back every single week and get to try something new. They're open Sundays from noon to 8 p.m., Monday through Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Thursday through Saturday from 11 a.m. to midnight. For reservations and party information, call 315-487-2222 for the Wildcat family-friendly sports pub and restaurant. In these unique times, there are those in our community that give us a sense of normalcy and positivity. Pizza Man on 50 Oswego Street in Baldwinsville has been here for you for over 35 years and is here now. Call 315-638-1234 or order online at pizzamanbville.com to bring those familiar tastes into your home. And remember to come see our monthly on-site broadcasts centered around the community and our Baldwinsville Bees. Pizza Man in Baldwinsville. Any way you slice it, they are always here for you.
This is Jim Sikowski, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Cicero, 7916 Brewerton Road in Cicero, right in front of the Home Depot. I had a deep feeling that God wanted me to do something bigger with my life and to help people, help others. I kept putting Chick-fil-A in my life, and I realized as I was going through the franchise selection process that positively impacting the lives of others was really core to what we do here at Chick-fil-A. First of all, it starts with the food. The food is brought in fresh daily. We bring in local produce. We prepare to order in the kitchen. We hand bread our chicken. We hand spin our milkshakes. It's great food. It doesn't taste like fast food. I think the second thing is the way people feel when they come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. It's different. We try to treat people with intentional kindness here, which is very different and deeper than good customer service. And so I think it feels remarkable for most people to come in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then lastly, the impact that we try to have in the community is very different. It's a big part of the expectation of every operator of a Chick-fil-A restaurant is that they're actively engaged in their community, they're a leader in the community, and they're making a difference. When they realize that what we're striving to do is to shine a little light in their life, that's a very, very different experience than you will have in any other quick service restaurant. And it's that remarkable experience that I think people will emotionally connect with.
I'm George Townsend of Honda City with some good advice when buying a new car. The true cost of owning a new car is determined by the appraised value when you trade it. No vehicle appraises higher than a Honda. Next, look for low APRs and deep discounts. You also want low maintenance costs and great fuel economy. That's why my advice to you is to buy a new Honda. Looking pre-owned, visit our Honda Certified Used Car Center. Honda City, 7140 Henry Clay Boulevard, Liverpool, or HondaCity-CNY.com.
It would be a pity if you don't shop at Honda City.
Our corporate purpose at Chick-fil-A is to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that's entrusted to us and to positively influence all those who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And what became increasingly clear from our success in Cicero is that people love Chick-fil-A. And also I think we recognized that we had a great opportunity to grow the brand and grow our platform. I felt incredibly grateful when I was selected to be a Chick-fil-A operator. I think what it's meant for me, what I've come to realize on a very deep level is that this is a calling for me. It's not a career. It's not a job. The Lord called me to be a Chick-fil-A operator and to use these restaurants to glorify Him and to positively influence other people. I'm blessed. I'm very blessed.
Head to Chick-fil-A Clay on 3974 State Route 31 in Liverpool, New York. Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, hanging out with you where sports truly meets that thing called life. We appreciate you being here with us every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, with some bonus time today, hanging out with Brendan Murphy, myself, Dan Tortora, talking sports and life inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, 3501 James Street, 324 West Water Street, 401 South Salina Street, all in Syracuse, on 343 Fayette Street in Manlius, New York, and on the corner of Route 11 and Taft Road at Sweetheart Corners in their drive-thru location in North Syracuse. So, with that being said, we are here in the final portion of today's broadcast to talk about the NFL playoffs, and we're going to Tarantino this thing. We're going to start from the end and move backward, and that is because I can't wait any longer. My patience of not saying this on the show has gone to its limit. Last play of the drive. 5 seconds left. 6 seconds left, pardon me. 6 seconds left. Cowboys, who once again couldn't figure out how to score after blowing out the Bucs, get under center. Dak Prescott. Bunch of receivers wide. No offensive linemen. Zeke Elliott, I don't know if he's ever made a block in the NFL. He's there hiking the ball. And not only was Zeke hiking the ball, which made me question reality, not only
was not having an offensive line there, just two guys, make me question reality. But after the ball was hiked, Zeke got blown up, and there was nobody there to protect Dak Prescott, which made a lot of sense, too. Someone who is highly illogical, irrational, and probably one of my ex-girlfriends. Throws the ball down the field to the middle. And with 6 seconds left on the clock, the greatest play that Dallas could have come up with was to not have their offensive line, Zeke Elliott to be your main blocker, and for Dak Prescott to throw a 4-yard pass to the middle of the field, needing 70 yards to score, in which that receiver got blasted and the game ended on one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in the world, beyond the NFL, beyond sports, beyond this planet and the Milky Way galaxy. If there were aliens watching this game, they went to another planet to look for intelligent life form. Brendan, I would love to hear your thoughts.
I don't think you could have described it any better. All I can say is, what the bleep was that? Like, honestly. Now, I kind of understand the idea. It looked like the idea was to, because they had a bunch of linemen on the right and a bunch of linemen on the left.
Yeah.
It looked like what the idea was, quick pass, a bunch of laterals, and just having the linemen out there to block. Which, all right, kind of makes sense. But the actual way they ran the play was horrendous.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Which is worse? Which play is worse? That play last night or that play the Colts ran on a 4th and 3 against the Patriots I think it was against the Patriots on a random Sunday night regular season game, like 7 or 8 years ago. The one where they had all the linemen, like they were lined up, and then everyone went out wide, and I think the fullback took the snap and to a corner.
Yeah.
It was a punt. I think it was gonna be a punt, and they were gonna like fake it. I don't know what the heck they did. But that play was pretty bad too. I'm just curious to see which one you think is worse.
Yeah.
So it looks like are you looking it up right now?
No, somebody asked us about Tony Pollard, and we're going to get to that in a second. So thank you for the question. But no, in response to your question, I have seen a lot of football my whole life, pretty much. And what I saw last night was like when ABC canceled George Lopez as its minority show so that they could bring on a show about the Geico cavemen because they wanted to create a new minority that the world hasn't seen yet. And that lasted 2 episodes. And I want to know who okayed that television show to make a pilot and why it was good enough to cancel an actual minority and a very funny person in George Lopez for the cavemen for the Geico commercial. Now, take the Colts thing out of it, because this is where I'm at. The cavemen ABC TV show and that play by the Cowboys, almost the same to me. Almost the same thing. If the cavemen hiked the ball and instead of going for the pass, ran out and attacked people I shouldn't say attack people, ran out into the stands and ate their popcorn. And I'll put it to you like this. I would rather have watched a marathon of the Real Housewives than watch that last play. And people that know me know that one of the most painful things, like if somebody was trying to get me to talk, instead of waterboarding, if they turned on the Kardashians and the Real Housewives and had my eyelids open, that's my torture. So I
agree with that.
Yeah. When a woman tells me, I was talking to one girl down in Florida. We were having a conversation and she said something and I was like, wait, are you watching The Housewives? She goes, oh my God, yeah. And I said, which one? She goes, I watch all of them. I said, don't tell me you watch the Kardashians. She's like, I love that show. And my head went, Dan, just get off the phone. Because there's nothing good's going to come from this. And if the Dallas Cowboys staff was watching an episode of The Housewives as opposed to creating a play, it would have made more sense to me they weren't ready for this. But I watched it, and my buddy Isaac, shout out to Isaac Elford, who comes on the show a bunch too for Tortora and Elford. Isaac and I were talking, and his TV was quicker than mine. So I said to him, don't say a word. Like, I know you suck, I don't say anything, so I'm still waiting for it. So he was like Switzerland. He didn't say anything. He was like Mom. He was the equator line. He didn't say anything at all. And he just waited for me to see the play. My response in the moment was something that he found very hysterical. But I talked about it for like 20 minutes, trying to figure out, and he tried to do what you did. Oh, let's see how this play was going to work. No. Okay? I mean, I put it to you like this. Some things just don't make sense. And hiking the ball with no protection, having to go almost the full length of the field, and then throwing a 4-yard pass as if there's 11 minutes left in the game. Like, take the blocking out of it. How does Dak Prescott with 6 seconds left go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the most dangerous and highest trafficked part of the field. I'm going to throw to the place where most people are congregated. And shout out to the 49ers, who probably went into the locker room thinking that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. So, listen, Cowboys, you know I love you. You know I appreciate you. But there is nothing that you can say to me that's going to unshow me one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life, one of the worst plays I've ever seen in my life, to the point where I thought about today, whatever Brendan and I talk about, if for nothing else, I have to talk about this. It was the one thing I had to talk about because it confuses me, it frustrates me, it irritates me. and I think, was there somebody on the staff that doesn't like Zeke that much that they're like, yo, he's not going to be a Cowboy after this year. May his last play be a play where he gets totally lit up. Because it looked like somebody was like, F you, Zeke. But I don't know. It was weird. It was strange. And in the grand scheme of things with the Dallas Cowboys, I would rather see Ezekiel Elliott wear half shirts with his belly showing for the rest of his life than to ever see that play again. Amen.
Oh my God.
And good night.
Yeah, I mean, you weren't kidding. I mean, that was pretty funny. If nothing else, it's given us a good laugh.
Yeah, I mean, and what do Cowboys fans want on a Monday morning? A really good laugh when they're not going to the next round of play. But it's like, I mean, San Francisco is good.
Let's be honest, though. Nobody likes Cowboys fans. I'm not talking about you, but like the Cowboys fans that are all over the country, nobody likes them. So I'm sure no one feels bad for them.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there are many things in life that I do not understand. I don't understand why my grandfathers died when I was 6. I don't understand most of the women I've met in my free agency. I don't understand why people do some things they do. I listened to a conversation in a diner yesterday that made me question all of reality. But if you put that all in a pile together, the Cowboys are right there. And I feel like if I went to my grandfather's right now and I said, Pop Miller, Pop Covino, what do you think? And they would go, I have no idea what they were doing. And that's fine. I mean, like, if I sat with God there, and I think to myself, because people say to me, what's the first question you would ask to God? And my first question I would ask to God is very unique and not what you would expect. The first thing I would ask God is, why did you create mosquitoes? Because everything on the planet was created with a reason and a purpose. But besides being spider food, mosquitoes have no purpose. They suck your blood, they make you itch, and they spread disease. They have no genuine purpose of good in the world. So I would say to God, why do mosquitoes exist? And probably up there on the list, I would say, what was Dallas really thinking on that play? And I just, listen, that was the last play that we saw in the divisional round. I feel like we all are owed a do-over. I think we retroactively need to get an apology from the Dallas Cowboys. Dak said that they got to make up for mistakes and whatever. But this Cowboys team was such an enigma. They could either not score any points or score 30. This game was horrible, and it played right into their hands. San Fran punted the ball back to them with over 2 minutes to go. It was 19-12. Score a touchdown, go to overtime. And they couldn't do it. So, do I think Zeke is there after this year? No. Do I think Mike McCarthy's there after this year? Probably. Dak, yeah, he just signed his deal. But I'm at a loss. And I will tell you that I saw Miss Congeniality 2 with an ex-girlfriend. I saw Babylon AD, which I think is genuinely the worst movie ever made. And I don't know why they made it, and I still don't know what it's about. If you put those two movies and that one movie, I can't remember the name because I fell asleep in it, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I slept a lot in that movie. If you take those three movies and that Dallas Cowboy play, I would count the Dallas Cowboy play as one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my goodness, yeah, I can get behind that, but I mean, you said it. I mean, the Niners kind of played into the Cowboys' hand here. I mean, but the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys and the Vikings were very alike this year. They were both teams that nobody thought were that good, and they were both teams that could either play really well or really poorly.
Yeah,
like the Vikings were either winning a game by one possession or they were getting the doors blown off.
Yeah,
Cowboys would either blow teams out, or their offense just wouldn't show up and they would lose by like 10.
Yeah.
Right. And it's crazy, but
I think
Dak
the Cowboys would have
Prescott
lost.
is the.
Oh, sorry. All I was going to say was I think the Cowboys would have lost in the college football playoff. I just want that to be known.
The way they played yesterday, I believe it.
And this is
I
coming
think
from
Georgia would
somebody
beat him.
who wants them to win. And I'm telling you that I think they would have lost in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
We're saying about Dak.
That might be us being a little exaggerating a little bit, but at the same time,
No, we're
like,
not.
yeah,
No, we're not.
They played terrible.
We're not.
So what I was going to say about Dak though, the man missed what five games, I think. He still led the league in interceptions.
Yeah.
Still leads the league in interceptions. Missed 5 games.
Do you know why?
Throws 2 interceptions.
Do you know why?
Because he tries to force it.
No, because Jameis Winston was hurt.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, Crab Legs was hurt half the season.
Yeah, that's why.
But yeah, like I've never liked Dak Prescott. I mean, he's a good quarterback and all, but like when the time came a couple of years back when they were trying to figure out who to pay, whether it be Dak or Zeke, at the time I said I would pay Zeke because Dak Prescott's not going to win you a Super Bowl. He's a decent quarterback, but he's not that good. Like he's going to turn the ball over too much. He's not going to do anything that's going to like. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. I knew he wasn't going to repeat what he did last week against the Bucks. They beat the Bucks because that Bucks team was just not good, flat out. I mean, you know it, I know it, everybody knew it.
Yeah.
I still thought the Bucks were going to win that game before the game. That was the only wild card game I got wrong, by the way. But realistically, Dallas did nothing in this game last night that made me think like, no, they're going to be fine. No, like Tony Pollard broke his leg, first of all.
Yeah.
Feel for him. That's, he's a guy that was a huge part of that Dallas team all year.
Yeah.
That duo of him and Zeke in the backfield all year was probably the most electrifying running back duo in all of football this year, without a doubt. Either one of them could score on any given day. Either one of them could go off on any given day. But, you got to feel for him. At first they said he sprained his ankle, but then when I saw the replay,
yeah,
I could tell that there was a break in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Whether it was his ankle or it was his lower leg.
Yeah.
Now they said that it's a fractured, I believe it was fractured fibula. So I don't think that's as much a recovery as tibia is, but still, just to kind of answer that question that we got earlier, that definitely could impact his free agency without question. You know, teams might be thinking, well, how is he going to respond from that? How is he going to come back?
Yeah.
Like that's not an easy injury to come back from and play at a high level. Like that could easily knock some big offers off the table for him.
But I think he stays in Dallas. I think Dallas.
I agree.
The last 2 years,
Yeah.
I think that Tony Powell. I mean, I've said it that he was going to take the job from Zeke, and that it was only a matter of time, in my opinion. So I think, they'll find a way to re-sign him. And they might do what they did to Dak Prescott. Just wait through his injury and be like, I don't know if we want to pay you. Let's see how your rehab's going or whatever. I mean, but I think they're going to keep Tony Pollard on the team. I think
makes sense.
I think Zeke's going to see himself go off to other pastures. To be completely honest, I don't know where Zeke. I don't know if he's going to.
Is he going to get cut?
I don't think he's going.
Because I don't think his contract's up yet.
Well, and I don't think he's going to be a starting back. Like I could see him going to Seattle. I could, he could
start. He could probably start somewhere. He could probably start like on a mid-tier team that needs a running back.
He could go to Houston and start, but I don't think that.
No, he won't.
Let me put it to you like this: I don't think he's a starter, and I don't see him as. I don't see him 20 to 25 carries every week. Maybe 3 times, but I don't see it every week. I think that you get more bang for your buck with Tony Pollard, and I think you get less drama. So I think Dallas lets him go and tries to figure it out from here and move forward. By the way, Tom Brady ended this season with a losing record, people. And that doesn't happen. So looking back at...
He's never done it before, I don't think, right?
I don't think he has. So ending the season with a losing... Now, if they had won, they would have been 9-9. So ended the season with a losing record. And that is atypical. By the way, not only did the Bucs end the season with a losing record with Tom Brady, but Bill Belichick didn't make the playoffs. So this was a year that like everyone that doesn't like the Patriots was waiting for. And this is a year where everything is wide open. I said it going into it. Anybody can win. Am I surprised that the Eagles are playing the Niners? No. Am I surprised that the Bengals are playing the Chiefs? A little bit surprised in the Bengals, not surprised with the Chiefs. Preseason, I said Kansas City or Buffalo to the Super Bowl, Rams on the other side. I was wrong about the Rams, obviously. But the 49ers, who would have
everybody was.
Right. Who would have thunk the 49ers would play 3 different quarterbacks to be that successful? So, and they all look like starters. By the way, going into this upcoming season, on the depth chart, I have Jimmy Garoppolo, quarterback 1 in San Fran, Brock Purdy 2, Trey Lance 3.
I agree.
Well,
first of all, I don't think the Niners will bring back Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. They'd have to pay him too much money, and there's other teams that are going to be willing to make him their starter. I don't think he's going to go back to San Francisco. They basically agreed last year that they were going to let him go this year, so they're not going to franchise him or nothing. He's going to hit free agency.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. I do think Brock Purdy deserves a shot at the job over Trey Lance.
Yeah.
I didn't think much of Trey Lance coming out of the draft. I probably thought he was better than Zach Wilson, but I didn't really know a lot about him. But my thought process was, what happened the last 2 times that guys were taken out of the D1AA schools in the Dakotas and Wyoming.
Yeah.
They turned into Carson Wentz and Josh Allen.
Yeah.
So those 2 picks did pretty darn well.
Yeah.
So I had a feeling that maybe, maybe he can be the next one of those guys. Now, it remains to be seen. It's not his fault that he wasn't on the field this year. He got hurt. There's nothing you can really do about that. But looking at Brock Purdy, he has just taken that job and run with it. He's 7-0 now? 7 or 8-0?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
He is Brock Purdy right now, since he took over, because he took over. I'm trying to think about that first game that he took over, and so Purdy on the Niners right now. Well, that's the thing, because I was looking at the Jaguars and talking about how good the Jaguars were, but then you could argue, I said going into it, the Niners were the most dangerous team. And so
Absolutely.
So looking at them right now, let's see. So Brock Purdy has won. Well, let's see if he played in this one, then he's 10-0. But I can't. I'm trying to refresh my memory on this game.
I don't think I would count the first one though, because I think he only came in like the third quarter.
Yeah,
I'd probably still call that a Jimmy G win.
So
not counting that one.
So he didn't come in this one. So I would say that he was. I guess you can cleanly say that he was 8-0. That he's been 8-0.
So 8-0 is the starter for the team with the best defense in the NFL, running arguably one of the simplest offenses in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think that's why the Shanahan offense is so good, because it's simple. It doesn't take much to put it in another quarterback, which is why I thought that Jimmy G would have been in a perfect fit as a Jet.
Yeah.
But now that LaFleur is gone, it's not as clean a fit as it once was. Now, could it still be a fit? Yeah, absolutely. I think it could be. And as much as I think Carr's going to be the move, I would still personally like Jimmy Garoppolo because he plays, the dude knows how to win football games.
Yeah.
So that's why I like him. But as for the Niners, I think, especially, let's put it this way. If Brock Purdy leads that team to a title, to a Super Bowl, he is not giving up that job.
No.
There is no way that you can put Trey Lance back on the field next year like nothing's changed.
Right.
They cannot make the same mistake that the Philadelphia Eagles made when Nick Foles led them to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I said right after that Super Bowl, I know Foles is not a long-term guy, but you can play a couple of years with him and wait for the right quarterback, but you take Carson Wentz at his all-time high value and trade him.
Yeah.
Get a boatload of picks, and they will find their quarterback 100%. Now, it worked out because the Eagles ended up with Jalen Hurts, and, they may end up going to the Super Bowl again this year.
Yeah.
Well, that remains to be seen. But, like I said, you have to run Brock Purdy back out there in week 1 if they win the Super Bowl. They just have to.
I think if you get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, you have to run Brock Purdy out there no matter what. And I think if you keep Jimmy Garoppolo, you have to have them both out there. By the way, I made a mistake. So the game that Brock Purdy came in, I would still consider him a starter in this because Jimmy only attempted 4 passes. In the Miami game, 33-17, he was 25 of 37. So he attempted almost 40 passes, which is more than some other starters. So let me, do something that a lot of people don't do in the media and admit that I was wrong. So I am looking at everything right now from the Miami game, which means that Brock Purdy has gone 6-0 as a starter.
6-0, okay.
Because I'm going to consider him a starter with 37 passes. 6-0. Well, 6-0 through the regular season, and then the win over the Seahawks in the playoffs. So 7-0, including the postseason. 7-0 as a starter. So
technically 8-0 now, because it would be 8-0 now because they just beat Dallas. So if it was 6 in the regular season, 2 in the playoffs, that'd be 8-0. But regardless, So
I was right.
So regardless of how many games he.
So I was right the entire time, and I confused myself. So I said 8-0, then I was right, then I was wrong. But yes, 8-0, 6 regular season games, 2 games in the playoffs, 8-0 in the 8 games where I consider him a starter.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm, you got the live chat in here as well, but your friend Greg had asked about with the running back situation in San Francisco as well, and he's saying that you can pretty much plug and play running backs in the Shanahan offense, and he's absolutely right. You can.
Yeah.
It helps that they went out and got Christian McCaffrey, who happens to be the best running back in the NFL, who also happened to stay healthy, knock on wood, during his entire time with the 49ers.
Isn't it amazing how sometimes all you have to do is change your jersey to be a totally different player?
I know. It's unbelievable.
Like the
it really,
first
really
week
is.
that he played for San Fran. He had, I think that was the week where he had a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown.
Yeah.
He's had multiple touchdowns in multiple games, and when you see him catch the ball or run the ball in the backfield, he looks almost unstoppable. Like he's in his prime, making you forget that he was the number one running back in the NFL a few years ago. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's still always been in his prime. He just can't stay on the field.
Yeah.
But now, luckily for the Niners, he is staying on the field, so that's a a really good thing for the 49ers. And I easily think they could ride the back of McCaffrey and Brock Purdy and that defense to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, the Eagles got to be nervous right now knowing that they've got to play the Niners.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I was in for those of you from my area in the Barley Creek tasting room on Saturday night watching the Giants-Eagles game. When it got to the point where it was a blowout and we knew the game was over, I was saying to Eagles fans, like, hey, who would you rather play, Dallas or the Niners? Yeah. Expecting all of them to say Dallas. And they did, naturally. Because they said, you know what, we'd rather play Dallas. It's a division game. And at the same time, we know it's an easier game to win.
Yeah.
Right? So, those teams going in there, now that they're going to play the 49ers, Eagles fans have got to be sweating. They got to be a little nervous right now.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're going to be playing who I would argue is the best of the four teams that are left. I would argue that they're better than Kansas City and they're better than the Eagles and they're better than the Bengals on paper. Now, is that going to be the case at the end of the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
That remains to be seen. But I think in terms of what you have seen from these teams and what it is on paper,
yeah,
I would probably say the Niners are the best team that's left.
Yeah, I mean,
around.
I said it going into the playoffs before they played a game that the Niners were the most dangerous. I would rank them as this, and I want to get your thoughts. Of the four teams remaining, this is my overall ranking. Niners 1, Eagles 2, Chiefs 3, Bengals 4.
I think that's fair.
I
think it's very fair. I mean, you could flip flop Bengals, you could flip flop Chiefs and Eagles easily, but
the hard thing for me
either one
is thinking that the Bengals are like the worst team of the four because I think they're dangerous. By the way, when Buffalo barely beat Skylar Thompson in Miami at home, my reaction to this was this does not bode well for their next game. Like, if you play that way against Miami in that situation, Miami this year with Tua was like, I mean, that's arguably an undefeated team. So you look at Tua, with Tua, without Tua, and Skylar Thompson had his best game of the season against the Buffalo Bills, who were Super Bowl favorites, and scored 31 points, like, in Buffalo. So I thought that was a really bad sign for the Buffalo Bills. I do want to shout out my teacher, my third grade teacher, Mrs. Kuno. If you have any of your teachers follow you after school, especially at 37 years old, in my case, and watch your work and comment on it and support you, that makes me feel like I'm doing something good in the world. I'm sorry to Bills fans this morning that I'm going to show you this picture. I'm going to show you two. Actually, I'm going to show you three. But this is the first picture that my third grade teacher, Mrs. Kuno, sent me. Please enjoy. It's a Bengal pooping on the Buffalo Bills logo. That is what my third grade teacher showed me. Then,
oh God, you've got to send me that. I gotta send that to my one of my coworkers. Matt is a big Bengals fan, so you got to send me that. I'll send it to him.
Then I got the Who Day. And the last one that she sent me was what you had said in the post game when he said, send those refunds. But
they played with a chip on their shoulder. They really did. I was
literally the game ended.
I was expecting Buffalo to win. Yeah. I was expecting Buffalo to win. Buffalo was my Super Bowl champion. After what happened to DeMar Hamlin, I was figuring that they were going to play, they were going to do everything they could to win that Super Bowl for him. Right. And, the fans were behind them and they were, they had DeMar Hamlin was in the building for that game. But I mean, the bottom line for Buffalo is their defense has holes.
Yeah.
Joe Mixon and that and Samaje Perine and Joe Burrow, they ran all over Buffalo.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I can remember, from what I can tell you about, like when the Jets played Buffalo, Bam Knight played well in that game, in that second Buffalo game. He ran the ball very, very well, from what I can remember. And Buffalo struggled to stop the run. And it's been the case all year long. Mixon, I think, had over 100 yards. If not over, it was very close to 100 yards in that game yesterday. 105 yards on 12 carries and a touchdown. Honestly, just watching him, he was picking them apart. Like it was too easy for him.
Yeah.
That's where Buffalo's biggest hole is. They're going to have to rebuild that defensive front, that front seven. They're going to want to stop the run.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Buffalo, they looked weak. Now, they got exposed at certain parts during the season. Remember, they had some lulls. They had a lull against the Jets, a lull against Miami. They had lull moments that made you kind of question things. But, here's this team that so many people got up for, and the way that they ended the season in the snow, right? Does it get cold in Cincinnati? Yeah. Does it snow in Cincinnati? Probably sometimes. I was in Cincinnati within the last couple of years. It does get cold in Cincinnati. But
not like Buffalo.
But Buffalo, that was perfect for them. So it's surprising. Now, Greg said, I personally see Pollard with another NFL team. Cowboys kind of made their bed with Zeke. I can see the boys drafting running back. Yeah, Zeke's under contract till 2027, but I think they're going to try and trade him. Shout out Barley Creek.
Probably be a big cap hit, though.
Yeah, but you're talking about Jerry Jones. Greg said, shout out Barley Creek. True. Their food is pretty decent, is what he said. And
pretty decent. Well, I mostly go there for the beer because I love their beers. This is a completely unsponsored ad for all intents and purposes.
If you say it but one more time, they owe me money. So say it. Just go ahead and say it one more time. Where are you at? What is it? Barley Creek?
I'll get Trip on the horn.
Yeah,
but
figure it out. Let's
get they got if you're yeah. But that's my go-to spot. Sunday ticket on Sundays. I was there pretty much every Sunday at the tasting room because they have the main location on the way up to Camelback and the one in the crossings. I'm a regular there. So if you ask anybody anybody that works there about me and what I do, what I do and how often that I'm there, it's all the time. But if you ever go to Barley Creek, the High Tide Golden Lager is my go-to. It tastes a little bit it tastes kind of like a Corona, which is not normally my style, but it's really good. So for me, that's what I like about it. But I love that place.
It's wonderful, and I appreciate our thoughts about them. It is now time for me to thank our actual partners, which I will do right now. Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Witty Wicks, K9 Camp Dog Daycare, Avicoli's, Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, PB&J's Lunchbox, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, K9 Campground Dog Boarding, Chick-fil-A Watertown, Mother's Cupboard, 317 at Montgomery. The name of the restaurant is the name of the location, 317 Montgomery Street in downtown Syracuse. By the way, they got a whole new menu coming out, and I have the exclusive on that, so pay attention to what's coming up for that. Great Lakes Honda City, the former Honda City of Liverpool, Pizza Man, and the exclusive multimedia marketing partners of the Lemoyne College Dolphins and the Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse. So now I can feel better about everything that Brendan just did on the show. So with that being said, before we hop out of here to our final fast break, so we've talked about Buffalo and Cincinnati a little bit. We're going to get deeper into that. We covered Jacksonville and Kansas City. We've already gone there. We've already very gently touched on the topic of the worst play I've ever seen in my life, arguably, with the Cowboys against the Niners. And Philadelphia blew out the Giants 38-7. By the way, the last time they played each other was the last game of the regular season, and Philadelphia barely beat the Giants' second-string players 22-16. So the second string...
That's why I thought it would have been a game.
Yeah. Davis Webb and company losing by 6 just to have the starters lose by 31 in a game that was 28-0 at halftime. So let's get our thoughts here on Philly, New York. and Buffalo Cincinnati before we take our final step aside. And I'll give it to you first, Brendan.
Okay. I thought you were throwing it to break there for a second. But yeah,
I figured your silence was your response of most people that watched the Dallas game last night.
Oh yeah, basically, yeah. I mean,
I thought you were doing your best impression of every Cowboy supporter in the history of. I think some people,
even every
Cowboys,
Giants fan too.
I think everybody kind of looked at the Washington fans like, what type of drug was allowed in that arena? Like, I just don't. I'm not. Listen. You know that I have, in the dating world, I have seen a lot of crazy people, and if a girl crawled on the walls, I wouldn't have been surprised. Next two girlfriends were scarier, but I will give the Cowboys some credit. Give credit where credit is due. I love how whenever I talk about my ex-girlfriend,
sure.
Brendan is totally silent. Like, he thinks they're going to say something to him. So...
It for the record, it hasn't exactly worked out that well for me. So, but
no.
I mean, just talking about the Giants Eagles game. I mean, my silence kind of can be construed as what my thoughts were.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about. The Eagles just were, they just outclassed the Giants. That was plain and simple.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the Giants necessarily. So when my dad and I went to watch the game, we went to the bar, watched the game. My dad had said pregame that if the Giants don't really make any mistakes, they've got a shot to win the game.
Yeah.
If they make mistakes, that's when they're going to lose.
Yeah.
Now, they really didn't make any mistakes. I mean, they had one turnover.
Yeah.
I think it was bad interception, but they had one turnover the entire game. So they just couldn't score. They couldn't score, and the defense couldn't stop the Eagles. That was just plain and simple. They were just outclassed by a superior football team. And that's really all it is, to be honest with you. It sucks for the Giants. I mean, I got plenty of friends that are Giants fans. Some of them were a little overconfident going into this game.
Yeah.
But I knew going in that the Eagles were going to win this game. I had it being a lot closer than it was. I mean, I had money on the Giants plus 7.5. I also had money on I teased the over to 41.5 and Giants plus 14.5. I figured that was a pretty good bet before the game. Obviously, we all know how that turned out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I can say about that. I mean, they just got flat out outclassed. I mean, that's all there is to it, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, it's a situation where, I think a lot of people thought it would be a game, and it wasn't. And Philadelphia just came out striking. I mean, obviously they've shown that without Jalen Hurts, they're a shell of themselves. But with Jalen Hurts, dangerous. I still am not fully bought into Philly. I think it's going to take them really beating up on San Francisco for me to think that they're not a little wobbly. But listen, I think San Fran, Philadelphia, fantastic game. On the other side of it, Kansas City, I think the Jaguars showed that Kansas City is beatable. I think Cincinnati, if you said at the end of last season, what team is going to make the Super Bowl that made it? Cincinnati or the LA Rams? I think most people would have laughed at Cincinnati. 2 people would have picked them, and I think most people would have picked the Rams. Rams didn't even make the playoffs. And here's Cincinnati, 1 game out of repeating in the Super Bowl, which is extremely rare to do. Not many teams have done it historically. So some teams have never been there, let alone be there 2 years in a row. You look at the Cowboys, you look at the Patriots, who made, that look maybe easy at times, but to most franchises it's not. So, I mean, going to the Cincinnati game, listen, Cincinnati with the attempted crossing of the goal line on that leap that was just slapped out of his hand and then returned 98 yards. Absolute insanity. Saw that right before I got on my cruise. And that was the deciding point in the game. 1 possession, 1 mistake. And Cincinnati winning that. Tyler Huntley in Baltimore, valiant effort, hell of a job, great play on the defense. And at the end of the day, Cincinnati squeaks by, and you say, okay, what type of Cincinnati's team's going to come in? and Cincinnati plays Buffalo and plays them the way that they did. They get up early, they stay up. Buffalo has no response. They can't get in the end zone. And the thing that I found really interesting is that Buffalo looked like they couldn't run the ball on the ground with the snow, yet Cincinnati ran the ball on the ground in snow. And it reminds us in the Pinstripe Bowl where the Syracuse players were sliding all over the field, offense and defense, and Minnesota was running totally fine. It was like they were playing on two different fields. And in the case of Cincinnati, they look like the team that was used to the snow. They look like the team that had ice water in their veins. They look like the team that was locked in. They look like the team that was playing at home. They look like the team that never shook once. And Buffalo had no response. And listen, they had some turnovers. They made some mistakes themselves, and that cost them, just like with Jacksonville. But Cincinnati got up, stayed up, commanded that game. And to me, that was a surprise. I thought if Cincinnati was going to win that game, it would have had to be close. 33-31, something like that. So for Cincinnati to win the way that they did, for Kansas City to barely win, I'm leaning right now on the winner of Philadelphia and San Fran to be the team to beat in the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Agreed, for sure. I think for the Chiefs, it's going to depend on how Mahomes feels come Sunday. I mean, the thing with the high ankle sprain, and a lot of guys talked about it over the weekend, the day it happens, you got so much adrenaline pumping through your veins that you can get back on the field and it's not going to kill you, which is exactly what Mahomes was able to do. But the next day, it's like you can barely walk. So, I mean, we don't know if he's even going to be able to practice this week.
Yeah.
If he's not able to practice, and that means Chad Henne's got to come in and get some reps.
Yeah.
I don't like their chances. I really don't. I mean, I would bet at that point on Cincinnati to go back to the Super Bowl, personally. But they played well. They played really well against Buffalo. They ran the rock well.
Yeah.
And if they run the ball well against the Chiefs again, I got a feeling that they'll probably go back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and the Chiefs don't play defense, so it's something to look at for the most part too. So we'll see how it shakes out. We're gonna have the final word from Brendan and I right after this fast break on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life, inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios. Final step aside here on the show, and then we will each have our final word here on Wake Up Call. Stay with us.
Cafe Kubal offers same-day local delivery of our products, offering no delivery charge for Onondaga County. Shop cafekubal.com for fresh roasted coffee beans, cold brew, travel mugs, and all your essential Cafe Kubal needs. Cafe Kubal, coffee for the soul.
This is Amy from Mother's Cupboard, home of the whole frittata. We are open daily 6 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. For takeout orders, call 315-432-0942 and tune in to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora for our monthly food challenge and try our Wake Up Call signature menu item available 7 days a week. Here at Mother's Cupboard, we are Central New York, and it's our honor to serve you.
Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory remind us that every day is worth celebrating. Find them at 201 Old 7th North Street in Liverpool, New York. Open Monday through Saturday in-store and all the time online at maandpaspopcorn.com. Serving our Central New York community and beyond, you can order all throughout the country at maandpaspopcorn.com. And remember to get your tins, which have in-store half-price refills forever. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, available to you for fundraising and all of your events by calling 315-450-6272. That's 315-450-6272. Ma and Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory. How corny are you?
Witty Wick Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus, where you will find handcrafted all-natural soy wax candles over 60 cents to freshen up your home. We carry a wide range of locally made items, Salsicuse, Syracuse Salt, and Chocolate Pizza Company, to name a few. Let our knowledgeable staff help choose unique gifts and keepsakes for any occasion. Gifts for family and friends, and maybe a little something for yourself. Woody Wicks Candles and Gift Shop, Township 5, Camillus.
This is a special message from Merritt Brady, owner-operator of Chick-fil-A Watertown on 1290 Arsenal Street in Watertown, New York.
Chick-fil-A for me has always been about the people. I think it starts with the strength and leadership of the Cathy family. It's just amazing to see a family-run business reach the altitude that they have. Second mile service is something that we embodied at my previous business, and the ability to make people feel like they're the only person at your establishment, that you are there to serve them that day and looking for those extra ways to make them happy, to anticipate what they need next is what makes me tick. And I'm going to have so many opportunities at Chick-fil-A to do that. It's one of my favorite things to eat in the world. My favorite application question or interview question when I'm interviewing is when I get to, have you ever eaten at Chick-fil-A? And a smile hits both their ears. They can't even answer the question for a second. And when I see that, it's like, man, that's going to be a great hire. They already get it. They already feel it. They already know that we're different. The Chick-fil-A experience, it's a real thing. And then, of course, just our generosity and community involvement and making a positive impact in the lives of our team members, our guests, and the community in general, I think is really the secret sauce.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios, hanging out with Brendan Murphy as we have a Murph Monday. Myself, Dan Tortora, a.k.a. DT. Of course, you can find us on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT. Keeping me warm on a very cold day in the studio is my Woody Wicks candle, which smells absolutely incredible. I'm surprised there's any Namaste at Home candles left because of me. So make sure you get out to Woody Wicks, 190 Township Boulevard today, and let them know the Wake Up Call sent you out to Camillus. And, of course, you can go to wittywicks.com for those of you out of the area, or if you're just staying at home and staying warm today and you want to do some ordering online, you can, of course, do that. But that being said, Brendan and I inside of the Cafe Kubal Studios have our final word apiece. It can be about literally anything. So, Brendan, your final word.
The thing that comes to my mind is, just... And it has nothing to do with anything we just talked about. I'm 3 weeks away from actually 2 weeks away now, from having shoulder surgery, and I am going to North Carolina to play my last 2 rounds of golf before that in the 2 days prior. So I will be at Tobacco Road and Pine Needles in North Carolina for 2 days to play my last couple rounds of golf. So that's the only thing I can think of is just trying to get the bug out of there.
Right, and make sure that we continue to pray for a speedy and healthy recovery and a full recovery for Brendan Murphy.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome. In God's name, Jesus' name. Amen. My final word would be cherish your loved ones. Don't wait until something bad happens to hug somebody. Don't wait until something bad happens to call somebody. Remember what it felt like to go through COVID, to be locked in your house and be alone. Be nice to people. Be courteous. Be kind. Be forgiving, be patient, and remember that your health is more important than anything else in your life. Take care of your health, be good to people, be good to animals, be good to nature, and remember that it is always okay to take a break. You don't owe anybody an explanation. So live the life that you want to live, and as long as you're not hurting people and out there doing bad things, live the life that you want to live and live your best life. Because you will never get today back again. As much as you try, January 23rd, 2023 will never come back again. So spend your days wisely. Do the best you can. I'm happy I spent it with Murph. And I want to let y'all know, really quick here before we jump out of it. Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora that gave you a lot of bonus time today. We always under-promise, over-deliver. That's what we do. Over 3 hours after promising you 2. Tune in live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. YouTube.com. Facebook.com and MixLR.com /WakeUpCallDT. WakeUpCallDT.com's homepage and on Facebook.com/LiveNowDT. Once the shows go live, you can find us on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, MixLR, Player FM, Podbean, Podvine, TuneIn, Spotify, Stitcher, and YouTube, as well as others, by searching Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora or one word, Wake Up Call DT. And if you just want to see where else we are, go to any one of your search engines and type in Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora and find us there. A big thanks to our partners, Cafe Kubal, Carvel DeWitt, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Witty Wicks, Avicoli's, PB&J's Lunchbox, Mon Pa's Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Mother's Cupboard, Great Lakes Honda City, Chick-fil-A Watertown, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Chick-fil-A Cicero, and Chick-fil-A Clay, 317 at Montgomery Street, a restaurant unlike any other nestled in downtown Syracuse on 317 Montgomery Street, Pizza Man, and being the exclusive multimedia marketing partners of the Lemoyne College Dolphins and the Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse. Get all of our content with Lemoyne by going to wakeupcalldt.com, clicking on the Lemoyne tab. For Bryan and Stratton, go to wakeupcalldt.com, click on the BSC Syracuse tab, giving them websites within our website. And for all of our content, you can subscribe to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt and get all the information there. For now, from the Cafe Kubal Studios, we bid you adieu on this beautiful Monday morning. We thank you for watching, listening around the world. And Brendan, as always, I appreciate you coming on to the show, but more than anything else, I appreciate your friendship.
Pleasure as always, likewise, and hope to be back soon.
Take care, everybody. And as always, 3-5.